Hello, friends. Welcome back and good morning to the Legend Fiction live stream. I'm your host, Dominic, founder of Legend Fiction, a nerd who has been writing ever since he was 13 years old, basically, and probably a bit longer, actually. That was just when my first novel came out. And we now have this channel as a place to share what I think, share what I am learning as a way to help authors, indie fiction authors especially, because that's what I am, be able to start and finish our dream novels. Now, this is a live stream where I just hang out for 2 hours every week that I physically can, and share things that I think, share what I am learning, share what I am doing. I'm trying to speak out of my own experience. Hopefully, that is something that can be helpful for you. I'm somebody who is not writing full time, probably like most of us, with maybe things like we would love to be. And if that was to happen, what are the mindsets or mind shifts that would need to be, true for that to happen? And then uh, gosh, who knows? As I share my journey, maybe it's something that can inspire you as well. So I'm trying to figure out the process of finishing a book, of starting it, of getting it done, and then of marketing it and creating assets and resources and different things that are going to help people um, hopefully thrive when it comes to doing this incredible thing that we love to do, which is sharing novels. Now, today we have a pretty stacked lineup of conversations I'm excited to get into. I have 2 articles or that I wanna kind of go over with you that I've written this past week. Gosh, is it 2? 3, actually. Been a busy week. So there's 3 articles to get to, which is basically me processing ahead of time so that, I'm a little less rambly with our deep dives. Then we've also got 2 guests coming on. We have BK Gibson, or technically just the B part of the BK dyad, because they are a couple writing under a pen name, or something like that. And then we have Father Ryan Dunn is coming back to talk about theology as horror, or the horror as a way to understand theology. I think that'll be a pretty exciting conversation. Okay, where to begin? Okay, the I had promised, so the title is about obsession, and this is something that I was thinking about when I was basically pushing the cart around at TJ Maxx over the weekend, and we were um, just my wife's trying on different uh, you know uh, looking for new items of clothing and for the family, and of course I'm just like pushing the cart. And so my mind just sort of wanders and thinking about a book that I have been reading recently. I wonder if I can actually find it. I'm almost done reading it. It's a book by he's not exactly a psychoanalyst, but he is somebody who has studied sort of the process of how Carl Jung thinks and so on. His name's James Hillman, The Soul's Code: In Search of Character and Calling. And one of the questions that he asks early on is, if you're trying to understand like why you're here and you're trying to understand what it is that you're deeply called to do, pay attention to your childhood obsessions, which, if anybody has sort of noticed, it's a question I'm now slipping into every time I chat with an author. What were your childhood obsessions? It's such an easy and fun way to talk with people. It's a bit off the wall. So I was thinking about that in terms of characters, because characters, um, really interesting and good ones, are often really obsessed about something. And then I was thinking about, well, what do you do with that? Okay, and so we're gonna read through, I've got a breakdown. Hopefully you find it as helpful as I think it's helpful. Character can be really obsessed about something up until a point where that obsession conflicts with a deeper obsession. Something like staying alive, right? And then you have to evaluate, or, my obsession about being free, is that bigger than my desire to uh, find home? Can I be free at home? And that would be the end sort of question, right? So it's a way to deepen your characters, kind of bring them to life. But it's also a really interesting way to sort of go through this and you look at yourself and realize, ooh, how am I trying to play the same magic spell and spamming that to try to win at life because the first few times I did it, it worked. And I'm trying to now do that for everything, which is kind of how a character can be. So we're gonna get into that. Before we get into that major topic, I want to give you a quick breakdown. Every year, I try to go through a Legend Haven after action review. So let me share my screen with you, and we'll do share, and I'll make this a little bit smaller here so that we can sort of read it. And I'll change my layout like this. Okay. I try to host an after action review after every con. And the reason why is because I like building things in public. I like sharing what I'm learning, and I'm hoping that you find it helpful too. It's a way for you to also give me direct feedback, right? So every time we run a con, I try to list out here's what worked, here's what didn't work, here's what people liked, and here's what we're going to do better next time. So we're planning on coming back on December 5th, right at the beginning for a um, sort of a Christmas convention. And if you were at the last one, some of this might land. If not, you can just skip this and jump onto our actual session section on Obsession. So let's see. We had almost 100 people come to this thing. Between the storytellers and the readers and the fans, we hit about 85 people. And for a micro community with a micro con, I think that's pretty cool indeed, especially with zero paid advertising. It's like this is all just people collabing together. Let's see. Um, we got loads of excitement. I don't know if you're catching the replays of the con afterwards, from the segments of the live streams, but people were so there was so much excitement. It was tangible. I was feeling it, but the people in the chat were feeling it, and it's sort of reverberating throughout the community afterwards. And people are still dropping comments about things that they liked, and so uh, it worked well. So I've made a lovely, I think these are so cool, little infographic. You can have a look at this. Chat is so fun. ChatGPT, you drop in your article and it just runs off a lovely infographic for you. It's really fun to sort of break it down. But basically, here are some of the things that we accomplished. We built a reader first, creator friendly online con. We brought together artists and readers and editors. Um, what the attendees loved most, they loved the read alouds. That was so cool. They loved the community and the connection. We had panels, expert insights, speed networking. It was inclusive, welcoming vibes. Okay, so we hit a bunch of things well, and so based on that, I'm always like, okay, what's the next level? How can we do it even better? Loads of panels and sessions. We did have a bunch of. It's just a wonderful, unforgettable weekend. Um, Let's see. Here's what we want to improve for next time. We want to improve time for speed networking. At first, I started at 3 minutes, and people were like, "Hey, I didn't get enough time to talk about anything. We need 7 minutes." Like this is not business networking where it's, wham, wham, wham. What do you need? Who are you trying to sell to? It's like, no, this is not even like speed dating. Like I'm not even sure if I want to spend any time with you at all. If you're an author, you probably have loads to talk about and you don't know how to stop. So we increased it from 3 to 7 minutes. And then when that's done, you cycle back into the main room and then you get automatically rerouted to meet with or paired up with some other persons that you can meet with them, make friends, chat with them. Um, Unstructured hangout times. This is something that's sort of come back. People really liked having just like a half-hour block or just open unstructured session for people to just simply chat together. So we'd like to bring that better. We need to keep improving the schedule. We keep trying to get better every year. So we'll just keep trying, keep working at it. I want to bring a more permanent visual marketplace directory. So I'm still working on that, thinking about that. I think it's going to be an incredibly helpful tool moving forward for all of the authors involved in our network and our community. And the more read alouds. I'm interested in the idea of a more of a radio play approach. Now, another approach could be to include more things like D&D one-shot sessions. So if you're somebody who's into D&D and D and gaming and you're interested in hosting some kind of a one-shot session, possibly using my nascent Legends and Worlds framework, which is my version of D&D for noobs like me, maybe you could try running that at the con and see what sort of fun people have. So let's see. Starting next time, something I want to do is help authors to do even better at building up their networks, building up their email lists, being able to sell books and garner fan messages. And the way to do that is by encouraging everybody to use a single tool when they enter or submit to participate in the con so that I can promote them better and so that readers and fans have somewhere to land that they're going to actually enjoy. So it's a bit of a pointless kind of effort at the con for all these readers and fans to get all hyped about these authors and they go to try to find them and then they land, for example, at their homepage, which is packed with like everything the author is doing, and they don't know how to find the one thing they're interested in, which is the book that they were talking about. So there we go. I thought that's such a fun thing to sort of see. Okay. Um, Look at that. You can see people just had fun. I mean, they were all in my storytelling session, so of course we had fun, but no, they were all genuinely fantastic people. Um, I think I largely covered it all. Now, this is the thing that I'm interested in. If you haven't yet seen it, I've built this book club. I don't think I've actually spoken about it yet with you. This is sort of the follow-up. This is still an idea, and I'm waitlisting this. But if you're somebody who likes book clubs and has been interested in having a place to talk about books or to find out what's worth reading, that's what this book club is for. Because you can now uh, join a book club that doesn't require you to actually read the book. I know, mind blowing. Let me show you the actual page here. So on the Legend Fiction website, if you hover under more, there's book club at the top. This is an idea that I am interested in testing because I think it'll be valuable to keep bringing authors and readers and storytellers together. So what we're doing is we're hosting a 2 meetings each month. Okay, you don't have to read the book. We're hosting 2 meetings a month. And here's why. I researched online to try to find out what is it about book clubs that people have a hard time with. What are everybody's complaints about book clubs? Now, if you're reading nonfiction, it's a bit different, perhaps, because there's more of an opportunity for us to share what we think and so on. I've seen on the other side book clubs where you pay $5 a month to literally watch the author themselves read a book quietly over a cup of tea, and I'm like, just it is amazing what kind of inventive things people will do. Well, I actually want a book club where people really feel like they're involved and they're enjoying their time. So I'm building something different. So here, let's scroll down and show you how it works. It's a bit more like a game show. Here's the idea: is there's 4 weeks of the month, so we meet the first and the second week, something like that. Um, we all come together on the first time, and members nominate book titles. And then, like, hey, I read this book, or here's this book. Like, we should all read, like, whatever. It's all trending, popular stuff. You can't nominate a book twice. Like, once it's nominated, that's it. Everybody puts it in, everybody votes on it. And then the top three go to a sort of a more special public vote. Whoever wins like the top three, they then get to sort of go on camera and say, people, in 30 seconds, here's why this book is the one that we should all read. And I really love it because this reason. And then the room again also votes out of those top three which one is the actual featured book for the month. And then on that night, that's the night, that's like the first half hour. Second half hour is our featured author, one of the authors who are involved either in legend fiction, has got a published novel, or somebody who is coming to this event. So it's a bit of a game night plus an author read aloud of a chapter of their story and a bit of an author AMA. Then the next week, everybody reads the book, and if you don't read it, it's no problem, but it's just a way to grow your to be read pile. Week number 3, here's where we come back. We do some speed meetings to network and chat together, and then we can also read like the first 2 chapters or something of the actual book, and we'll do it again, sort of as a table read, people taking the voices, or what we could do is like 5 chapters to one or 5 paragraphs to one person, a couple of paragraphs to another. So everybody, who wants to gets a chance to actually make this a unique and interesting evening. And that's something that I think I've not seen anywhere online as far as book clubs go, where every single meeting and every experience is just going to be so completely different and you don't exactly know what to expect. I think that sounds pretty amazing. And then lastly, in week 4, we'll have a snap vote where we ask people, what did you think? What'd you like best? Quick little poll, right? And so you can see we're trying to reinvent the book club and do it in a totally new way, totally new, interesting way, in a way that we think has never-ending fun, no pressure on anybody, and frankly, it's more about bringing the people together. So you can have a look at this. What I'm thinking is it's going to be about $5 a month. That's the plan. So putting together a wait list, and if it interests you, you can join that wait list, and we'll see where that goes. But this is a way to keep the conversations going after the con has finished. Okay, so that was the end of our recap on the after action review and what I learned and stuff about the con. Now, let's get into talking about obsession. This is a topic that I thought was so incredibly interesting and fascinating. So let's give a little read through this idea. I think it can act like an engine kind of inside your story, driving how a character responds in every scene and every situation. Um, so let's just get into it. I'm going to read it aloud. Okay. A bland character is often bland because they behave too sensibly. Fiction has very little use for people who keep making, well, the reasonable choice, with the reasonable emotional reaction at the reasonable time, right? It just sounds boring. Real people are only sensible in brief, humiliating flashes, often while comparing batteries or pretending to understand printer settings. But most of the time, people are dragging around some private little religion or a skill or a wound, a talent or some sort of coping mechanism, and it's a thing that they can do better than most people, which has slowly become in their minds the answer to everything. And that's, I think, the trick. So we've got a lovely look at this. It just looks amazing. I got to stop using the word lovely. I'm on a pattern here. You can have a look through that and poke through that. So give your character one arena where life rewards them. Okay, it's like one place where they feel less breakable and more powerful, and then make them try to use that skill, that arena, everywhere. And this is why obsession is more interesting than just giving them a flaw. Frankly, I always have a hard time figuring out how to do that. So if you turn it into something positive, new things can sort of open up in our minds. A flaw can just sit there like a damp sock, right? Okay, so like, oh well, they're an amazing character. Like, oh, they got a flaw. Like, okay, pride, fear, vanity, cowardice, envy. All right, fine, it's very moral. It can seem very dead on the page, and you can sort of be trying to force that into your character to make them a little less likable. Um, it just sits dead on the page unless it walks around and starts interfering with deadlines. And that's kind of what you want, is you want your character to have something in them that's kind of pushing against or stopping or obstructing or struggling with the actual story itself. Now, here's the thing. Obsession just makes sense for survival at all and how we survive. It gives the flaw behavior. It becomes a survival tactic. It makes the character do things, even wrong things. It makes them do determined things or absurd things, dangerous things, things that force other characters to react to them, because obsession is like an uncontrolled energy to get something done. Think of a painter who is just, he's in love with his art, okay? Oh, that's his passion. Okay. It's a notebook entry. But a painter who believes that every human problem can be solved with the color red. Now, that's a character to make you keep turning pages. So imagine, for example, these are ridiculous, but they kind of make the point. So his friend is grieving. So imagine he paints the room red. It's about vitality and trying to bring him back to life, with energy. It's like not what the character needs to see. Um, the village is under attack, right? So what does he do? Okay, here's the answer. We're going to design red banners, red shields, red emergency soup, because morale is a matter of palate. If you can get people to see and feel a certain way. Okay, now he's not totally wrong. That's kind of the point. He's not totally wrong. But the actual answer might be to, I don't know, dump boiling oil or throw rocks or get out through the back door, right? But he doesn't know how, he's not good at logistics. So he does what he does when he's obsessed with his answer to everything. Let's say that his daughter refuses to speak to him, so he paints a magnificent portrait of her in red large enough to frighten horses. And she still doesn't talk to him, for example. The king might demand a military strategy, and so he recommends scarlet uniforms because no enemy can defeat a people properly committed to visual unity. Right. So the painter who is obsessed over painting and using color is going to try to do that everywhere, and he's going to try to solve all the problems in the world using that skill until it doesn't work anymore. So it's ridiculous because it's real, right? People like you and me, we do this constantly. Writing this article, it's a little bit of a self-admission here. The socially gifted person will try to charge a judge or a wolf, a locked door, or a grieving widow. It's the wrong answer to basically all of these. A marathon runner will try to cure shame, boredom, marital distance, and existential dread with maybe hill sprints. Let's get people out of there, into their bodies. Let's get them exercising again. Mm. The graphic designer tries to repair a broken company with a cleaner logo. It's not me, basically. I have to try hard not to do that. The strategist will try to solve grief by making a plan. The warrior tries to turn everything into a battle because battles make sense. That's a logical thing to solve. The storyteller tries to turn every wound into an epic world instead of learning a lesson and apologizing. Not me, basically. So introducing an obsession out isn't for everything. A short story often needs the main desire sort of fast, right? That's why short stories and novels are a bit different. In a short story, you get the main desire faster than the first few paragraphs, uh, probably definitely the first page. What does the character want? What is blocking them? Why it matters? What they're prepared to do about it? Okay, present that really quickly. They can often be external things. It's not always something that's going to be an internal thing like an obsession, because you need more room to actually do justice to something like that. A novel has more room to get into things to allow for character growth. So whereas a short story might be We have a problem. The painter goes, well, this color red is going to solve it. Let me go to work doing it. Oh no, there's not enough red to accomplish the goal. What do I got to do? Um, Extract it from the warehouses that are in enemy territory and then bring it back. That is the short story. The novel would then explore the bigger fact that he's got this massive obsession that's holding him back from actually being a functional human being, right? So a novel has more room to get into things to allow for character growth. That's where we see that the visible goal is tangled up with an inner obsession that keeps hamstringing the main character from actually winning. So here's examples from movies. I thought these are ones that I have been watching recently. I really liked them. You might be able to find better examples or run through a list of your own. So this theme seemed really obvious and compelling to me. Just go through them quickly. If you haven't seen War Machine, it's pretty awesome. So his character is fiercely obsessed with winning and getting across the line. And it's driven by a personal reason that's revealed later. By the midpoint and the climax, that obsession is tempered by another one. He also wants to be a good man, and winning by himself cannot justify that. Then we've got, for example, Peaky Blinders. Tommy Shelby is obsessed with creating safety for his family, and that means taking all the responsibility and becoming the biggest dog in the yard. But as the story grows, he becomes, I think, equally obsessed with his own identity, and he reaches a question of whether victory is worth becoming someone he cannot live with. I think that's an interesting take on the story. And those are two very strong competing obsessions. Something that what is an obsession, right? Something you will sacrifice for because it matters and it's important to you. In A Monster Calls, this is a boy, right, he's obsessed about refusing that his mother's dying because accepting it feels unbearable. And so then the story forces him to then confront a deeper desire that then has to temper that more superficial one. Okay, it's not superficial, but his deeper desire is that he himself has to live and find a way to live outside of the loss of his mother. Especially when he's feeling guilt and fear. Bloodhounds, I'm still watching season 2 of this and it is so fun. But the main character, Kim, right here, he is obsessed with boxing, with having the heart of a real fighter, but he does this by taking all of the risk onto himself. He wants to solve all the problems and not put anybody else in danger at all. He doesn't want to share the danger or the difficulty of the responsibility. And of course, that means he gets beaten down and he loses a lot and he gets into more situations than are required and he keeps trying to fight his way out of them. He then has to learn to include others, right? So there's you can have the obsession, like you can be the lone winner or you can live, which is the warrior's kind of conflict, right? This one, The Ritual, is a horror movie. He is obsessed over his guilt at failing his friend. He's constantly ruminating on it. He can't let it go. It becomes a defining part of his character, his inability to talk, to communicate properly, and everybody else is sort of poking at him. So it's a pretty obvious obsession. He doesn't want to be that person, or he's stuck and he doesn't know what to do. So it keeps him passive and leadership avoidant. Then the monster in the movie, it exploits that wound. He then has to tap into a deeper obsession. Is he going to let it overwhelm him and stay stuck and passive? Or is he going to literally choose his own life and freedom and stop letting regret define him? Okay. The Great Flood. You're definitely not noticing a theme here among all the movies I like to watch. Anna is obsessed with survival as the water level keeps rising. Totally normal response. We want to live. She's trying to keep her kid alive. That changes when she is separated from her son. And now she's obsessed with finding him, even if it puts her in danger before the end, right? It becomes this constant battle, this competition between these internal obsessions. Now, obsession for survival is such a deep kind of animal, programming or something. This might not exactly be a totally fair one, but in the sense that it overwhelms all of your decision-making faculties and it eliminates the ability to choose anything else. That's what makes it an obsessive thing. Um, the show House of Guinness, I enjoyed this one. It's trying to go sort of Game of Thrones or Peaky Blinders on the founding of, the whole Guinness brand. And we've got this family of sodden dilettantes. They're obsessed with winning, success, and growing the business into something powerful. They just cannot figure out how to work together because they have a pretty traumatized trio. That ambition collides with a conflicting deeper desire. They actually, over time, want to become people who can respect themselves. after that victory of winning the family, and they don't want to be bad people. They want to be good people. Put aside the fact that this might be complete marketing, movie series to sell more beer in the context of the actual story being what it is. And maybe they don't call it beer. Maybe they genuinely call it Guinness. I don't know. I'd love to drink it sometime. Inside the context of the story, that seems to me to be the point. How do you be a good person when you have been trained and taught to kind of be bad? Uh, a 1% turn towards goodness is a victory and is a win. It's a very Game of Thrones kind of mindset in my mind. And K-pop demon hunters, right? Rumi. Now she's obsessed with hiding her true nature while maintaining popularity and control over her image. So that ends up creating that obsession, right? To try to control everything that creates comedy, tension, lies, and relationship pressure until the secret becomes impossible to keep contained. And that conflicts within a deeper obsession, and again, I think I'm using obsession in a slightly loose sense. You can have like a mission, right? That you can sort of choose to accept. You can have like a life goal, but when something rises to the level of an obsession, it's something that there is nothing else in your mind when you're obsessed over it. It dominates your time, all of your effort, and everything. And I think that that can make a character interesting. Um, I'm curious what you think. Tell me what you think. Right. So in each story, the character's obsession originally makes sense, but then proves too small for the deeper problem. So it begins as a way to survive. That's why the character trusts it long after it starts causing them damage. Somewhere in the past, that method worked. So let's say the weak child found out there was a way that they could become funny. So now they will always try to react with a funny response. Um, Instead of, they're always trying to be funny because that's what made them popular. An ignored girl became excellent. That was a way to become undeniable. So she will always seek to be the best at everything, or she will pick her one lane and never want to leave it in like a career path or a life path. And not even, for example, she will deny getting married or dating or whatever because she has no idea how to be excellent in those, but she knows how to be excellent as an assassin or as an accountant, whatever. Okay. And then there's like more like the bullied kid discovered muscle and now he can't stop doing anything beyond just sort of working out. I think that once you've figured out something like this about your main character, then the story can attack the hidden belief beneath the skill. So if I keep doing this thing well enough, I will be safe. It's a very inner child response or mentality to things. Around the middle 50% of the story, the character should like try to obsess as hard as possible because everything is stacking up against them. And it should still not be good enough. And now the character becomes interesting because they become trapped. This is kind of why you need novel length time to think about this. It gives the writer a scene engine. Whenever the story is starting to slow down, or you're wondering how do I respond in the next, scene or chapter, ask how the character would try to solve the current problem using the one thing that they worship. So an archer or an assassin, for example, would negotiate by looking for weak points or get across the country by maybe taking the scenic route because nobody can track them that way, something like that. The gardener will handle politics by pruning, weeding, grafting, and occasionally suggesting compost, maybe in ways that make the court nervous. Again, how a gardener goes about winning at being a gardener may not be a good learning transfer, or it could be actually very interesting if it does. Um, he may try to go to war by thinking of it in terms of gardening metaphors, and that might just not work because people aren't plants and they don't grow straight. Uh, Even when you tie them down, they fight back. I don't know. The actor can respond to a divorce notice by searching for a better play that will change their partner's mind. Okay, instead of actually being the human just sitting down in a room and just having a tough conversation, this person might do the impossible and go on a year-long tour to prove that they're deeply in touch with themselves by acting and bonding with the unique character that's in the play to communicate that they're really here, right? Because that's all they know. That's at least that's what they think. So they've told themselves. The cartographer might try to understand people by mapping them, which could require even more time alone in their studio away from people. The fitness obsessive might propose burpees, for example, at a funeral or at some function, because grief is like it's stored in the hamstrings. Grief is stored in your body. You need to exercise to get it out of you, as opposed to actually, no, maybe you need to literally sit and experience that grief for a minute and see what that does to you. It's more than a quirk. Okay. Again, it's like quirk or a flaw can sometimes feel like a decoration that you stick on afterwards, but obsession is like it's like an engine that you can't get away from. A quirk says that, oh, he wears purple socks, right? Well, obsession says he believes purple socks are the source of courage and nobility and marital stability, and he will bankrupt a duchy importing dye before he admits his father never loved him or never gave him purple socks, something like that. Or, his father always gave him purple socks. And so he's going to continue doing that forever. And he can't go through life without ever doing that. And he wants everybody in his team to all wear them. Right. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting really weird and interesting character responses that can drive lots of interesting little dynamics. So the final shape of the arc with this can go maybe three ways. They might surrender the obsession and become freer, although if we're honest, what most of us do is just simply a lateral move on the game board and we just pick a new obsession and then we start winning that. And that's kind of how you get seasons of a show. And basically daily life for us, you and me. We may also sort of integrate the obsession. You keep the gift, but you dethrone it. So you're still obsessed, but you balance it with something else. Or yeah, maybe you just balance it. Or you may double down, and that's kind of what an anti-hero does is they double down on that obsession. They might win the initial battle, they might win the task of the story, but then you can see they have lost themselves. They have basically become a program in their own life as opposed to a person. So I recommend studying real life. If you pay attention to real life first, that's what's so interesting. Um, Fiction is mostly people watching with better lighting, right? Fewer legal consequences. So if you just think about this, like people you meet in college or at your parish or community center or wherever, an opera singer will want every gathering to become somehow an aria. They will want a chance to sing and lift people's spirits and bring them joy, right? They will have very good reasons for practicing their obsession that way. A dancer will hear community night and immediately sees choreography and then will want to train people on swing dancing and how to um I don't know how to get the right kind of musicians over to do square dancing or something, right? A fitness man will hear a fundraiser and so he'll create like, oh, let's do a 5K. Everything is improved by sweating in numbered shirts, right? And people are like, no, we just want to bake cookies. Like, you don't want cookies that makes you fat. You won't live long enough to have another fundraiser. I don't know. The organizer can make spreadsheets for the 5 stages of grief instead of actually, I don't know, sitting with a person. Now, you might actually create like a really, really helpful spreadsheet and you might share that and it might help a whole lot of people. Um, the point is that the character sort of wins and loses at the same time. A funny one can joke through pain constantly. I mean, you probably know somebody like that. Cannot be serious. That's their survival tactic. Uh, Now, to raise it to the level of an obsession would be for somebody who would want to maybe become a comedian, um, because they can't handle their pain, and if they can make themselves feel, joy and fun, then they can avoid facing what they're going through or the difficulties or whatever it is. A smart one might do researching, more researching, forever obsessing, rabbit holing. Definitely not me. Instead of making an actual decision. A spiritual one might pray more when they need to actually apologize, maybe get out and fix the thing that they broke, right? So if we look at our own life, where do we escape? What do we escape into? Because there we know how to win. Design, writing, planning, helping exercise, study, being impressive, being right. Maybe writing a blog post like this one, probably. Give your character a talent that they trust too much and then make them use it everywhere. Obsession is fascinating and maybe even funny because it's recognizable. It's tragic because it did once work and really good things came of it. Um, and it can become story because the character can finally meet the one problem that refuses to be solved by their favorite magic trick. What do you think? I'm very interested to know what you think. Head on over to the blog, and you can scroll through that and have a look at that and tell me what you think. Okay, so that was that one. Now, we've got about 12 minutes. I think what I'm going to do, yeah, towards the end of our show, I'm going to recap our latest pennon. I think I'll do that after my conversation with Father Ryan. So let's go through no discounts. Now, this is something. I don't know if you're an author and you have seen like, is it May or is it April? Everybody's doing discounts and so on. Okay. I am literally tired of discounts. Please stop doing the whole discount thing. Instead of doing discounts and kind of devaluing your book to try to get more attention, I mean, you can do whatever you like, obviously, but this is something that I have learned over in business. If you're constantly running discounts, you're constantly in a race to the bottom. Are you actually creating enough value or enough of a connection with your audience? So, okay, if you're going to run a discount, that could be a really smart thing to do, but expand your world. Have an upsell, right? So if you have a 99 cent or a $1 little gifty that you give away, what if you also had like a $10 or a $100 sort of upsell? If somebody loves this, they then come and explore this other thing. Now, think about that as an author. This is something that we do in marketing or in business. What if you had that? What if you had your discounted sort of freebie leader magnet thing? The idea of using your entire novel as a reader magnet. Um, I don't know exactly what I think about that. It's kind of a big deal. Now, I mean, I love having books on Kindle Unlimited, and I will grab them constantly, largely because I don't have a lot of income. So, okay, again, keep your discounts, keep your secrets, um, keep your Kindle Unlimited or give it away for free or something. But I'd like to encourage you. Let's think about expanding your world. Let's think about doing something bigger that maybe you can make more income. Because hey, if you could make more income as an author, wouldn't you like that? So we're fond of discounts, right? Because discounts are simple, and the way that a brick is simple. Like you pick it up, you throw it, something interesting happens, right? Don't have to think about anything. Discount does one useful thing. It does make the book cheaper. Now it can get it into the hands of a bunch of people. It can create a lot of buzz. But is there anything else that you've got going on that can capitalize on the buzz that you're creating? So let's do something. Can we make the book matter more? Now, a reader standing before a book is rarely thinking only, can I afford this? And this is me processing what I think. I think a reader is thinking through a nest of small, nervous, readerly thoughts. Will I enjoy this? Will the author waste my evening? Is this world worth entering? Do I care about these people? Will I finish this and feel fed, or will I feel as though I licked the wallpaper in a dentist office? And a discount will answer, well, at least the wallpaper was cheap. Lick was basically free. No, I'm tired of authors acting like the only lever that they have is making the book cheaper. Everywhere else is marketing, or everywhere else in marketing, businesses do the opposite. Got a little uh, landing page that I saw online, and you can just Google it, swipe where the carousels. I've not purchased their stuff. They seem like they're a really good thing. What they do is they have a core offer that might be very inexpensive, and then they have an upsell that is a lot more pricier. They're using the lower price thing to inspire you to come and purchase the bigger price thing, right? So they stack bonuses. That then also it increases confidence, increases perceived value, makes the buyer feel like that initial purchase like opened a bigger door. You want the, I would imagine you do. You'd want the ongoing relationship. So let's see. Course sellers. If you're selling a course online, we do this constantly. If you buy the course, you get the template, the workbook, the call, the private group, the swipe files, the replay vault, the checklist, the certificate, the audit. They just stack all of these things. And once you create them once, you don't have to create them. Most of these, you don't have to create them again. You just sort of bundle them together in a Google Drive and you make them available. Now, there's a lot of time and thought that's gone into them, and they can be really helpful if you're selling like the picture that I shared. If you're an Instagram carousel seller, you can buy the pack. You then also get hooks and captions and layout prompts and design examples and content calendars. All of these additional resources, you make them once and then they're available for resale afterwards. Kickstarter does this at a structural level, right? If you back the project, you don't just maybe get the book. You can at the lower levels, for example, if it's a book thing. If you back at higher levels, what do you get? The collector edition, the art print, signed copy, early access. You get all of these lovely extra fun things that bring more value and connect you more deeply to the creator and to the world. And so the authors keep reaching for the tiny lever. Well, maybe I should just run a discount. I think let's grow the offer instead. And so that's what this conversation is about. Don't just discount the book, expand the value around it. For example, this is what we'll talk about. What if you had a world Bible, right? Or a character archive? What if you shared a mood map or an art pack or even an author commentary, right? You could even host live reader events only for people who buy your book at the discount during this specific time of the year. Maybe people who buy the book are the exclusive access at this particular time to join your street team or a group of hyper fans. You can have bonus stories. Um, I look at, I mean, just there's so many different thoughts that we could get into here. So, what if the book stayed the same price? And here's my thought to you. What if the book stayed the same price? You've probably seen this, and it's absolutely frustrating at what's it called? Black Friday, right? Where it's like, oh, the TV is 399 and it's 399, and then it comes Black Friday and then it's marked up to 499 and then it's still 399. Okay. Now, that's just frankly lying. I don't know how to get around that. And we all see that and it all just makes us mad. Well, what if instead your book is sold at $10 for most of the year and it's only available at $10? But then if you buy the book for $10 during the special discount time, you'll throw in this bundle that's worth an extra 100. And then after the discount time is over, the bundle goes away and it's available for like an extra 25 on your website or an extra 100 on your website. Okay. Now you're not lying and you're not raising the price, but what you're doing is you're taking that $10, which you would be associated with that book. Or okay, maybe it's 99 cents for the first book and then the rest of the series or whatever you charge, right? And that's sort of the gateway into them, which I think is a smart thing to do. A lot of authors like to do that. But what if to inspire people to get that first book, you just let them know, hey, for this time frame, look at all this extra that's available, right? If you want more than just a book, we've got in a whole world because you as an author are a production studio. I'm tired of seeing people, right? Well, first of all, what if all authors became smarter business people? Okay. So I'm tired of people spending years writing a book and building a world and developing characters and cutting chapters and researching history and doing all the things that we do, right? And all they get is like one lonely product file in Kindle. And that's all you've got. I'm like, that's just mad. Authors are sitting on treasure. We call it clutter, right? Old notes, character sheets, world Bibles, reader questions, private ideas for the next book. Now you may not want to share all of that, but to a reader, I mean, can you imagine getting access to Tolkien's notes kind of while he was creating it? I mean, can you imagine being able to give him feedback while he was creating it? That's pretty incredible. If massive movies can release 4K collages and documentaries about how the sausage is made, and then they can double their income and in triple fan engagement, I think we can do that too. So how do we do that? So you can have a look at this nifty infographic. Now, the book is the core offer, meaning it's the beginning. So, assuming you have a finished novel, now I've got a couple and I need to put them out there. I'm working on that. The first move is obviously simple: publish the book, put it on Kindle, sell it direct, make a paperback, whatever that is. But you've got all of this other stuff: characters, locations, world building, research. Okay, well, imagine you had an offer like this. Buy the novel for $9.99 for a limited time. Get this, you could sort of create the value. Um, $500 worth of secret world lore or something. So if you had a world Bible, that could become like a bonus. I thought of taking my whole world Bible and just putting it on my website like a wiki. Um, well, I probably will still do a bunch of that, but what if I had maybe a very nicely designed version or a complete version or one with bonus notes or behind the scene posts, something like that? What if it was all in one neat document or a private link to a wiki? And what if I make that available to anybody who buys the book? Make it feel like an artifact. Could be a PDF or Google Doc, private web page, or something like that. Maybe it's a $5 add-on. Maybe it's free for direct buyers. Scan a QR code in the back of the book, and here's the extra world Bible if you loved this book and you want to go more deeply into understanding what it is. Okay. I think that's so much better than a discount. Imagine you had behind the scenes with your characters, right? So full character descriptions. Maybe there's alternate art that you've got for a particular character. Um, Other ideas that a character could get up to, the readers might actually love to see. I mean, I know I would love to see all of this sort of thing. I mean, I'm also creating it, so I love to see it as the author. It's catnip, right? Compared to a discount. Now, you've probably got a mood map. So if you've got Spotify album or like a Pinterest playlist or pictures or galleries of stuff that you've created to inspire you, sort of charts the emotional territory of the book. What if you put all of that together? The myths, the legends, places, artworks, saints, monsters, histories, obsessions that fed your story. What if you could just put all of that together into some like a nice folder or a document? You could put it all out as blog content, and then after it's available as blog content, you could still put it together as a buyer bonus because convenience factor of having everything in one place is still something worth charging for. Um, Nobody's going to go through your blog where you're posting about everything. You just take it all together. You could do for free, and then you could also, hey, it's all in one place. Here it is. Okay. Artwork. Oh my goodness. If you can do artwork, if you can hire an artist or you can sketch your own or get stock art or generate it, whatever, it makes for additional magic to enrich your world and help people more clearly see what the vibes are that you want them to see. There's also value in just letting them have their own sense of things, but more often than not, you've got a pretty clear idea and you'd love for them to see what you think or what you see. So maybe they've got this full artwork sort of with concept art and concept ideas, and you put it all together as a single bonus. Okay. Now, here, this I thought was pretty really cool idea. Imagine you had a director's cut for a book. Okay, this could just be like an audio file. And you pick up your book and you go through it chapter by chapter, okay? And you just talk about the inspiration for this chapter, what you thought about it, okay? You go through page by page, maybe even with a friend. You just comment on each chapter. Um, so why the villain changed, why this chapter almost got cut, how many times you rewrite this, what almost happened in this chapter, what scene came from a real memory, what part maybe scared you, what piece of research changed the whole book. That could easily be like an hour long, if not more, conversation. And then you could just sort of bundle that. You could frankly give it away for free in pieces, or you could just make it a special little gift that's only for somebody who buys your book. Okay. Um, so much more exciting than a discount. What if you did live readings? And so you could host a private meetup for people who bought your book to come hang out with you and read aloud a chapter of the book. Okay. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to charge for any of this if you don't want to. You could make this something that people could sort of join your little club for like $5 a month, or they're supporting you on Patreon or Substack, and they then get access to this. Or if somebody buys your book, you could send them the private link, right? Maybe they go fill out a little form they can only see. They scan the QR code that's inside the book, right? It's more memorable than a discount. Um, Somebody who gets access to your book and who loves the book, maybe there's an option in there to join a street team, to join a private group full of hyperfans. That's one thing fans love. And we know this from fandoms. We love to meet each other. So maybe give them that opportunity. Maybe it costs something throughout the rest of the year. Maybe it's bundled in and included if you buy the book during a special discount period. Okay. So you're not discounting the book, you're just raising the ceiling of everything that goes into that book. You may have bonus chapters and side stories. I'm routinely doing this. I'm like, oh, this is a side character. He needs his own story for this scene so that I can develop him. And I thought, well, I don't know what to do with that story. I might as well just put it online. Oh, what if you just include it as a bonus inside this special author bonus kit? Okay. Um, and then if you have an ongoing series, that can make it even stronger. So you can collaborate with your audience. And you don't want to talk to like just anybody. Maybe it's just your private group of like 5 people, 50 people, depending on how popular your marketing is. But it's just that private group. And then you partner with them about, okay, you love this book. What are some ideas, right? They can suggest, see early sketches or suggest side characters or vote on a bonus scene, right? You can collaborate with more people. Not everybody will want to do, all of these options, but they will love the fact that you gave them an opportunity to be more involved with you, and it's an exclusive thing that they kind of paid for because they bought a copy of the book and now they got access to all these other things. And the last thing, yes, physical touch can still matter, and that's actually printing something. Now, I would personally never do this because I just don't like to handle the logistics of driving down to the mailbox all the time. But you may absolutely love that. Love the experience of folding and crafting and doing a wax seal and putting a nicely designed whatever and sending it off as a little gift with a little handwritten note. That kind of thing is sheer magic to get that from an author. So maybe your entire bonus pack, you print it all off and then you send it off to whoever bought your book during that special time. So what you're doing, think now instead of a discount, what if you thought of an author value stack? So you could stack all of these ideas, right? Director's cut commentary, story DNA reading guide, your soundtrack or playlist. Again, a lot of these you may make available around your website or it's posted throughout your blog, but what you're doing is putting it all together in the one place. Again, the world is valuable to the fans. Think of the Star Wars extended guides. The author's process is valuable to fans, right? Stephen King talks about his process all the time. The notes that an author has are valuable to fans. Think of Tolkien. You don't have to be dead to be capitalizing on this. What if you were alive? Okay. The readers are valuable to fans. Think of J.K. Rowling's mega fandom base, right? The author's live presence is valuable to fans. Think of Sanderson hand signing everything. You physically doing something creates a special layer of connection. And yes, your unfinished fragments may be valuable to fans, like unfinished tales, right? So instead of buy my book because it's on sale, what if you were to try? Here's the secret atlas, character archive, deleted side story, director's commentary, and an invite to my next live reader night. No additional cost, just the cost of the book. So instead of shrinking the price, what if we expanded the value? And if you've got better ideas, I would love to know what they are. Drop them in the comments. Tell me what you think. If you test anything, tell me what you think, because I think this is pretty interesting stuff. All right, we've actually got our first guest. Let's see if we can bring in our first guest. Welcome to Ben Gibson. Hi, Ben. How are you? Welcome to the live stream, sir.
Hey, Doc. Yeah,
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I'm doing good. Hey, can you hear me all right?
I hear you're a little
Yeah,
bit
I can hear you fine.
soft. Audio's quite soft.
All right, I can up that.
Oh, there we go. I hear you.
There we go.
Fantastic. What do I call you? Ben? Ben Gibson, right? Because BK is the pen name for you and your wife, I think.
Yes, I'm Ben and my wife Karen. We write together under BK Gibson, so
That's
you can
awesome.
just call me Ben. That's fine.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks for jumping on. It's cool to spend a half hour and um, chat with you about your book. You've got fantasy novels set in a pre-Christian world. I think that's what you said to me earlier. So I thought, let's
Yes.
chat about that. I want to hear about your author story, your writing process. Just yeah, let's meet Ben. So thanks for waiting. I just got off of a run through a couple of articles that I shared on the blog for Legend Fiction, and now we're shifting into our, hang out with author guests segment, and you're the first one. So glad to have you on. I don't think we've not met yet, so this is our first time chatting together.
Actually, I was at. Yeah, I don't know if we chatted. I was at the one of the LegendHaven cons, the one last year. I don't
That's
know if
right,
we got to be
October.
in some of the same sessions, but
Hmm.
I was there. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
so I
we
was
didn't
there in
get to
October.
score time together. All
Mhm.
right, so let's talk about. Well, do you
Yeah.
have a copy of your latest book that you'd like to wave around?
No, I don't have the print copies here.
Okay,
We're actually so Freedom's Vow is the what we're going to be discussing. It is actually available for pre-order right now. It'll be coming out
nice.
on the 19th, so 5 days from now.
Oh, exciting.
That will be a. It's set in a secondary world, epic fantasy. It is set in a kind of a Grecian-inspired world.
Wow,
So we're talking. There are definitely going to be centaurs and minotaurs and hydras and everything
nice.
else along those lines. It's a lot of fun. Hoplites, phalanxes, all the good stuff there. We were very excited about this. Yeah, Karen and I we write quite a lot together. This is actually going to be our first published novel. We have written a bunch, but we decided to have a large backlog before we started publishing. We
Wow.
are working
Okay.
with Celine Press, which is an imprint of Canon Publishing.
Mhm.
So you've probably heard of Canon Publishing. They know mostly as military sci-fi. If you know a lot of military sci-fi, they have a pretty big imprint there. But for fantasy, they wanted to spin off their own imprint, and we're working with them there. So it is like I said, it is, when we talked about it, it is set in a secondary world, but it is very much a pre Christian kind of a look at. It's very much in the mindset of ancient Greece,
It's
classical to
yeah.
ancient
The
Greece.
cover is so cool. People will
Everybody
see it on the
loves their.
thumbnail,
Yeah.
or they can check the link in the description. I'll send it over to you guys on
Okay,
on
good. So they'll
Amazon.
be able to see the thumbnail.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, do you have a copy of the
No,
blurb?
I love
Otherwise,
it.
I can read it aloud.
I will say, yeah, if you want to read that aloud.
By the way, there seems to be maybe a little delay between us. Is that on my end, or are you getting a little delay too?
I'm getting a slight delay when you're
Okay, I'm
moving.
seeing about a 5 second. Can I ask that we just try something? Just hit the refresh and come right back in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Freedom's Vow. Like that is, if you haven't seen it, hit the link in the description. I will actually, let me see. I can probably go do that right now. Put a link in the description.
There we
Welcome,
go.
testing, testing.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, I think we're a little more in sync. Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted you. So,
No worries.
um, do you have a copy of the blurb that you can read aloud?
I mean, if you want to read in your smooth as butter voice, you're welcome to.
Oh gosh, it's more fun listening to you though, because you're the actual author. Give it a go.
Yeah. Okay. So this is once again for Freedom's Vow. So if you want to, again, you'll see it down there. Stand tall, citizens. Shields up, spears out. Hold to the passion of courage. So we are looking right here. Sorry, the blurb is coming up. In the world of the three seas, two city states are stand at the brink of war. The city of Hellemar faces destruction as hoplite armies prepare for battle. Within the city, Arit, Knowing only a life of slavery, vows to seek freedom at any cost. She's thrown into conflict when she and her master discover she is a shepherd, one who has a mystic talent to kindle passions in the hearts of people. Passions of rage, joy, fear, and courage all rise and fall at her will. 15 years ago, Arit's soldier friend Philon witnessed a single shepherd destroy his army and take his people captive. Seeking not only to control, but to understand the ability behind the destruction, he joins Arit on her quest to repay a debt, venturing where not even the creatures of myth dare to tread. As Arit and Philon seek answers, the city-states clash, each exploiting the talents of their shepherds, and a greater unknown threat is growing. A power may yet rise that will lead to the destruction of all, one brought about by war and the talent itself. An epic tale set in a Hellenistic world that is both familiar yet fantastical, in a place that may very well be real, somewhere and somewhen.
Okay, so that sounds fantastic. This character of the shepherd, or this role of the shepherd. Um, okay, so we got to get into this in a minute, but I want to understand, how do you and your wife collaborate or work on projects together, and then you've been stacking them. So that's I'll save that question for that. Where did this idea of a shepherd come from, and then how does it impact and influence the story? It's so unique.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of cool. So my wife and I, we write everything together. One of us sometimes will write the first draft, and the other one heavily edit the other. There's always gaps though, so there'll often be, for Karen, it's often insert action scene here. For me, it's often okay. There needs to be more character development, but I don't know what to do, or better dialogue here, please. So we have our
Oh, that's
strengths, and
fantastic.
yeah, we have our strengths and weaknesses there. But the reason why we collaborate so closely is that everything Karen writes, I edit fully,
Hmm.
and everything I write, she edits fully. So she and we murder each other's darlings all the time. We have no problem with, cutting whatever needs to cut. We have no problem with any of that. I trust her completely as a reader. First of
Hmm.
all, I know that she's going to do make good choices there, and it's vice versa. So all of our stuff is going to be collaborated like that. The shepherds actually started with a dream Karen had about the magic system. And
Oh,
so she
wow.
was telling me about that. She's like, I think this is really cool. And I was like, I know exactly where this is going to be interesting. I'm the history nerd of the two of us. And I
Oh,
thought,
really?
if we go into the Hellenistic world where armies fought in shield walls and the phalanx, where morale mattered so much, because you're shoving and shoving in a tight battle, men at your side. The first person who falls, the first side that managed to give into fear,
Hmm.
that's the side that lost. That's the side that would have everybody else around them die because they flee, they die. And so I was like, I bet this would be a huge deal for the Hellenistic world. And so we just started world building after that. We go back and forth. We outline together. We outline heavily. And so, I started coming up with ideas, and then she starts poking holes in them. She starts
Hmm.
asking questions throughout all of it. Okay, that
My
doesn't
gosh,
work.
breakfast
So,
at your guys' home must be incredible. Like,
our daughter will give us huge eye rolls. Mom and dad are talking about their book again. So every time we get the kids' eye rolls, we know that we've been rambling on about it. But it's a lot of fun.
mhm.
So that's kind of our process. And then the shepherds, we start working on it. You'll see it's not a spoiler to say. So the shepherds have their emotion powers, but there's something else at play.
Mhm.
They also play with forces, elemental forces, and that'll be seen in the very prologue. So I won't get deep into the mysteries of the book because that's kind of part
Yeah.
of the exploration of the book. A lot
Mhm.
of the book, it's between two rival city states, but we love the classical epics. We love epic fantasy that has a lot of journey into strange, unknown places. It
Mhm.
feels like, for us, I know some people have very city based fantasies, but for us, it's not proper fantasy unless you're going on some sort of journey through the wilderness and, finding strange creatures, uncovering ancient mysteries. And so that
Mhm.
is kind of the focus of a lot of the very first book.
Mhm.
I did mention Shepherd Trilogy, and like I said, we write a lot. We have the trilogy done.
Oh, that's
So this is
amazing.
the first book published, but we have the entire trilogy done and ready to go. Well, the next one is in beta reads right now. So
Okay.
the third one is in first draft. So there's editorial passing.
Hmm.
But we also have a belief we don't want to do the Rothfuss or Martin thing where you start one and then people enjoy it, and I feel like that's not doing a really good service to your fans and for anybody who enjoys what you're writing. So we
Hmm.
want to have it done. So Freedom's Vow does tell a complete story, but there's a larger story at play. But the good news is that entire trilogy is written,
Okay.
and the publication schedule is going to be largely dependent on, obviously there's details. That's going to be how we do for the cover, how long it takes for the copy edits.
Hmm.
Neither of us are amazing copy editors, so of course we have fantastic copy editors for that.
Hmm.
We have a lot of good stuff in our process there, but typos still escape.
Oh
But
yeah.
anyway, so Freedom's Out, yeah, like I said, it's really exciting to go through and explore the shepherds. That kind of gets you an idea of where the
Yeah.
world
Oh,
is.
that's just amazing. Okay. Why did you, as soon as you heard this idea, instantly decide, okay, it's got to be Hellenistic, as opposed
Uh,
to any other culture? What is it about that clicked for you?
so part of it is just the fact that the classical Greeks worshipped the passions.
Mm,
So the start, depending on translation, the first line of the Iliad is "Rage, goddess, rage, sing the rage of Achilles." That's invoking both a muse, so goddess in there is the muse, but also
mhm,
rage is a person.
mm,
Courage is a person in all their things. So I was thinking the society, especially with these shepherds, would be worshiping these passions as the Greeks worship their gods, almost as philosophical ideals as well as deifications of the given passion.
mhm,
And so we also talked about a big essential conflict in the society is stoicism. Obviously, people who have training to resist being easily influenced by people who can manipulate emotion, that's the primary judges of the society. That is the primary those are the primary counterbalance to the shepherds within the society. It's why the shepherds don't run everything. There are stoics who train, and so
mhm.
stoicism is another interesting philosophy that seemed to just feed into it well. So we just kind of worked back and forth, and that's where we decided to go for the Hellenistic. Also,
Mhm.
I mean, it's also really cool. Like, there's something really cool about a
Of
Corinthian
course.
helmet, and big shields and big spears.
Oh,
Come
no
on, that's
kidding.
cool too.
Totally iconic. What were some of the inspirations that went into this, like in terms of books and movies? You've mentioned the Iliad.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, what are it's sort of comp titles or comp influences that inspired you?
Yeah. So, in terms of comp influences, Xenophon's Anabasis is a huge influence for me personally. I don't know if you know the story.
I haven't read that one.
Xenophon was it's a true story.
Hmm.
Xenophon was a mercenary general who was a Greek with Greek soldiers who worked for Persia in one of their many, many civil wars. The trouble
Hmm.
is their emperor candidate, the guy who was hiring them, died while they were in the middle of Persia.
Ah,
And if you ever get the chance to read Anabasis, it's the story of his 10,000 mercenaries making their way through war torn Persia and then Asia Minor, going through all these strange places trying to get home. So it's a
huh.
true story of the mercenary army of all these Greeks in a completely alien world, kind of going home, traveling through all that. That was a huge influence for me growing
Gosh.
up. It's a real true story, and it's amazing. I can recommend it to
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
who wants to check it out.
What's the name of the director who did Justice League and This Is Sparta? Um, oh gosh, I
Oh
forgot his
gosh, why
name.
should I? Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like somebody needs to give him
The
a call.
300
Like
director. Yes,
300, yeah. How has he not told this story? That sounds insane. It's like behind enemy lines
I
with
know it's true.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the only so funny there is a movie retelling of it. It's The Warriors.
the Warriors?
Yeah, it's
I've not
the
heard of
it's
that.
the New York gangs semi-musical story where it's a
Oh,
bunch
okay.
of it's the gangs going through the various different gang territories in New York. It's an old classic from
Interesting.
decades
79.
ago.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a basically it's a modern retelling of it. But that's the only thing I know of that's really
Okay.
inspired by it. It's a wonderful true story. And of
Amazing.
course, we have
Okay.
huge fantasy influences too. I love medieval fantasy. I love high medieval aesthetics.
Hmm.
Part of the reason why we like to go to the Greek is it is both familiar to us and it's familiar to us as audiences, but it's
Hmm.
also fresh. It's a little bit different. It's kind of an alien world. but at the same time, it's our roots if we're all,
Okay,
in Western
pull on
culture.
that thread. How is
Hmm.
it an alien world? I love that. I don't want to ask about the centaurs and the magic uh,
Yeah.
fauna
So,
in this, but yeah, how is it an alien world?
well, because a lot of it is we have understanding because that's where a lot of us came from. Western
Hmm.
culture, at least, that's where most of us come from as a background. But it's also a pre-Christian culture. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of their mindsets were very alien to somebody who's grown up in Christendom. They have a different view of nature, of man's relationship with nature. They have a different relationship to each other.
Hmm.
There were some early seeds in there in Greece. Actually, there's another influence that Karen and I both loved early on, Till We Have Faces by C.S.
Oh,
Lewis.
yeah.
If you're familiar with that one, that is
Hmm.
set in Greece.
Yep.
It's the story of Psyche, and that is a beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful story. I could recommend to anybody. But
Hmm.
C.S. Lewis does a great job of showing the different mindsets of these people. When they kind of grapple with it. Of course, his C.S. Lewis is C.S. Lewis, so he has also a Christian spin on some of his on some of it. But the
Hmm.
original way of looking at the world, it's an essentially a group of people who are alienated to nature, and they are in essential conflict with nature. They don't have
Hmm.
mastery of nature. Nature has mastery of them in the pre-Christian world, which makes for some interesting adventure stories. And that's the thread we're pulling on there. It's a
I
different
like
mindset.
that kind of thinking. How did you make it? Okay, so that's so interesting. One thing that's interesting about, for example, like you mentioned, Lewis, versus Tolkien. Tolkien is like, we want a clear sort of mythic engagement with Western European myth, psyche
Mhm.
stuff. And Lewis is like, are you kidding me? The West is a backwash of every culture smushing together.
Mhm.
So we should find the golden thread that runs through all of these myths and just narniate the heck out of it. So as you're engaging with a pre-Christian worldview, and it's kind of funny. I do think a lot of fantasy fiction is functioning out of a pre-Christian world, and that's a whole conversation, whether it's intentional or not. It sort of makes sense to go there. Why we do that is an interesting thought. So as you're trying to do that, get into the mind of a world, like you just say, where they don't conceive of themselves as stewards of nature, masters of nature, whatever.
Mhm.
Nature is very, very obviously a master of them. What does that open up in terms of? I'm assuming there's gods still in this world. You've got fantasy fauna going on. Um, what did that open up? As somebody who's a historian, you take details seriously, or at least you know where to fudge things and to make
Mhm.
it believable or more believable. Um, how does it make for more interesting adventures in your
So
world?
what part of it is there's a certain overwhelmingness. There's a certain helplessness that these people have in against
Interesting.
nature. There's
Mm.
elements of survival.
Mhm.
Now, what it means is if you take it to the end, it leads to nihilism.
Mhm.
A lot of the pre-Christian Norse mythology really showed it, but there's a nihilistic thread for a lot of it. It is, in the pre-Christian world, it is hopeless. There is this man struggle, this hopelessness. That's
Mhm.
not where we come from. We never want to have. We believe in not having a nihilistic outcome. Like
Mhm.
Karen and I are both Christians. We both write as Christians. It's not Christian fiction, but we're both writing as Christians. And
Faith
nihilism's
inspired.
not
Yeah.
right. Nihilism's not where part of it is. But what it does mean is there's a lot of people are having a harder time finding hope. The people are having
Mhm.
a harder time, finding the real virtues. And actually, a theme that's it's a theme that you'll go throughout this entire series is even though they have these martial pre-Christian virtues in a lot of how they're interacting with everything,
Mhm.
which have some validity. Courage is a huge and good thing. One thing that you're going to see is something that the spirits that they interact with, and something that a lot of these shepherds interact with, they can't quite hit the deepest and the truest virtues, which are faith, hope, and love. And that's kind
Mhm.
of that's they're discovering it. They're looking
Mm.
through that and finding in a lot of ways, even though there's overwhelming nature, there's overwhelming passions, there's overweening forces, at the very end of all things, there is still, in all these characters, there is still the seed for faith, the seed for hope, and the seed for love. So you'll see little hints throughout all of that.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of the redemption in the story is going to come from the fact that the characters are eventually going to learn basically to embrace deeper virtues, deeper things than just the passions, because all their society is focused on these very pre-Christian passions. And I'm
Hmm.
not dismissing any of it. I'm not saying they're
Hmm.
not powerful, but
Hmm.
I'm saying there's a deeper power within it, and then
Yeah.
that's kind of where they all come from. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're
Amazing.
we're playing with it.
I like that. I recently was reminded about a scene in the Odyssey and how I haven't slowed down to think it through, but how a lot of the Odyssey seems to be challenging um, how the Iliad is set up. So as you mentioned, the first line of the Iliad, rage and tell us of the what was it, the honor of Achilles or the
Yeah,
glory of
the Rage of
Achilles,
Achilles. Yeah,
rage of Achilles.
different translations will say different versions of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Iliad is it's like a struggle, perhaps. The Well, you're the historian, so you tell me. It would seem to be the biggest contentions of the Iliad are about honor, doing the honorable thing, and you have various characters not meeting that or honor from like the wrong side and being forced to
Hmm.
recognize honor. It's a very sort of manly sort of how do you make sense of honor in an impossible situation that won't ever go away? At what point does it cross lines into dishonorable conduct or so on? And then what's interesting is you get the Odyssey coming along and going, how honorable are you if you're home, you're not keeping your bed in order, to quote
Hmm.
Peterson, right? If your home is trashed out with suitors and you're over here fighting for somebody else's marriage, and then and so the scene that really stood out to me that I reread recently was when he meets with oh gosh, what's the name of the ghost that he propitiates who comes to give him advice? Not
I,
Telemachus.
I know the one you're talking about. Yeah,
Say Tiresias. Is it
hmm,
Tiresias? Okay.
that sounds
Um,
right.
and I think he meets maybe the ghost of Achilles or something, and who says basically, yeah, in here the Grey Havens. So this is getting to that nihilism you're talking about. In this gray other world that they live in, honor means nothing. And so it seems that a lot of the Odyssey at its heart, beyond the hand wavium and the fun, it seems to be a wrestling with um, the book of like Ezekiel. Like all is dust, all is wind, and you could go full nihilist on that, or you could go, still, there's a germ or a seed of something under all of this. And even though there's no reason to be hopeful, the best you can do is like farm cabbages and have one wife and a little
Hmm.
home and do good, even if there are no gods or something. And it seems the Odyssey is messing with that as a counterpoint to the Iliad and so on. Sounds like your book is sitting in that same sort of place. Am I
Yeah,
right?
kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, again, fortunately, we do have knowledge of other things. You'll see little hints. They do have, as they go through, these people do have a small memory of, they have this little shrine that's often neglected in all their sacred groves. They have one little shrine they keep to the unknown God, the nameless
Oh,
God.
interesting.
They'll,
I like
they'll
that.
just keep that in the back.
Yeah.
Because again, we're never going to neglect that entirely. So we have a different place there. But yeah, the Odyssey, it does seem to be grappling with that kind of, and I don't know how much of that's foregrounded. I don't know
Mhm.
how much of that is. I don't know how much of that is Homer's own struggle, and how much of that is something he wanted to bring out,
Mm.
and how much he was being informed in. Of course, I think it's also important, though, the Odyssey is first and foremost something to be told to be entertaining, and it's a
Mm.
wonderful thing,
Yeah, of course.
and that's here too. Like I don't want to overemphasize, all this is kind of informing the adventure, but our first job here is to tell a very entertaining story. We want to have a
100%.
great
Oh, yeah.
time, like with people that
Okay.
people love. We want to have action adventure. We want to have hoplite battles. We want to have all that too.
Awesome. Oh man, I'm start trying to imagine the movie that this would be because your cover is so fun. Uh, Sidebar: early beta reader reactions or early reactions from people. What are they loving most about this?
Um, so it's depending on which ones. Again, I'm not a professional historian. I said I'm just a history nerd, but there's some history nerds amongst my friends who've been doing the beta reads, and they go, "Wow, this is awesome!" They're like, "You got it, you've got it, you've got it." All the ones who are checking for accuracy, they go. One guy was like, "I'm. This is so different from the Christopher Nolan Odyssey movie in terms of her historical accuracy." I was like,
Oh
"Thanks."
wow.
We'll see how that goes. But so they got really excited. But we've also had ARC readers we looked for people who are not history people, who are just fantasy fans, and all of them have just gotten really excited. They love the monster fights, they love the kind of fresh action scenes, but most of them have just been talking. I want to know where the rest of these characters go. I want to follow these characters. I want to.
Oh, that's
They're like,
awesome.
okay, this was good, but I want more of the. And I'm really glad. Like I'm really glad that's bringing actions. I want to hear more of these people,
Mhm.
especially Phylon. We have three protagonists. We mentioned Arit first. Phylon is who she's walking with in the cover, but there's also Jason, another young man of the city. So all three of them, people have really been caring about. But I think Phylon, he's the oldest. He was originally a citizen of a city, and he was captured in battle. So he has a very different. He starts out as a slave, but he has a very different perspective from somebody who was born as a slave.
Mhm.
And everybody's been like, I want to know more. I want to know all three of these people. I want to follow them. Like, and that's wonderful,
That's
because
awesome. Yeah.
I at least maybe it's different for you, but for me, I pick up a book because the setting is cool. I pick up a book because, oh, this cover looks good. You turn over to the blurb. Oh, this looks like a cool thing for me to see. But the only things that stay with me are if I actually love the characters, if I can
Right.
really enjoy the people. So
Mhm.
that's a really good feedback.
Yeah. You in the blurb you define what did you say his name was? Phylon. He
Hmm.
witnessed a single shepherd destroy his army and take his people captive, and so
Yep.
now he wants to understand this ability. How do you make, or what's your way of trying to make the character uh, a rounded or interesting character? And obviously, you've landed that plane. People are loving the characters. Was there anything that you did more intentionally, like between yourself and your wife, to make these characters feel more real?
Partly is we talk back and forth. We want to talk about them always being they're always people. They're always humans. They all have mixed emotions. Nobody's universally good or universally bad. People will have moods. People will have goals. But in all cases, they're heroes. So one part of being a hero is you follow your goals heroically. You'll keep with it. But Phylon is everybody's loved Phylon because he's very cynical. He's a baseline cynical person, which is kind of an interesting person to have as a hero because he is driven by honor. He's driven by vows of vengeance. All three of
Mm.
the characters have a vow, and that's kind of where the play of the title comes
Conflict.
in.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he has a vow, but he enacts it in a very. He's a very cynical man who has. He originally had a lot of his society's ideals. He was, a young soldier who believed in 100%. But he has been a young soldier, a young citizen who was privileged to be a warrior, and then he got captured, got turned into a slave, was a slave for he was slave for a decade and a half. So he has a very different perspective for all of that. And I think that's what everybody likes.
Okay. Amazing. Oh, this is fun. Okay. I have so many other questions. I want to ask about the fairy, not fairy, the magical fauna or magical races or creatures in this, and I wanted to understand a little bit more about as my last question, how you and Karen met and what it's been like to be writing together all this time. But let's talk about. You said there's centaurs, and I imagine there's gods, and you've got dryads and everything
Mhm.
fantastical from the Greek worlds. Um, how did you approach that? Did you try to put a little more of like a rule set or a little more coherence to it, or um, how do you handle the fantasy creature aspect of all of this?
So, so we are somewhat more naturalistic in a lot of things. If anybody wants to go, I imagine you'll have our website on the somewhere on the thumbnail or down below,
Mhm.
bkgibson.com. Our newsletter actually has a novel, like a free novella set in this world. And in that novella, the main threat is a Hydra.
Mm,
But we have a naturalistic look. The Hydra regenerates. It can regenerate its heads, and it does have poison, but it's not something as mystical. It's a monster. It doesn't have some of the mythic weight of other things because for the novelette, that's where you want to have a physical threat in this particular case.
mhm,
Centaurs are people, and a
mhm.
lot of the ways we interact with them, they are tribes actually. So this is where we have different ways of doing it. Karen, we knew there would be centaurs in there. Karen started writing them, and she came off. They're very alien. She went with a lot of horse herd psychology in how they do it. So they're horsemen
Interesting.
in
Yeah.
that sense of they also have the sense of herd. They also have the sense of dominance, and they also have the sense of just the same way horses kind of treat each other in interactions. They
That's
have some
amazing.
of
Yeah.
that going through there too. I was surprised. She said she was surprised. Actually, that was, asking if there's any standouts. Costas the centaur.
Mhm.
He's the side character that people have attached to most because he is
Mhm.
he's an interesting and fun, both somehow a braggart and a coward, and comes out as surprisingly funny for something such
Yeah.
a interesting psychology.
Yeah.
So we kind of look at that. We both have science nerd aspects too. So we also look at the biology of like how something could work, how some of these monsters would work as physical creatures,
Okay, so do
as you
your
can
centaurs
imagine.
have two stomachs or one? How do you run that?
I mean, they have two. I mean, because that's how you have to work it.
Man, I would.
We
I'm
don't we
actually
don't
very
think too
interested
much
in.
about it.
Yeah. Okay, got it. I love that one point you just said about leaning into the more alien side of these creatures. I think it'd be just incredibly cool to host like a workshop, maybe with you and Karen, like taking your fantasy characters to like the next level by leaning into the more alien psychology of what it means to be mashing up different animals or beasts together to influence how it means
Mhm.
to be human. That would be such an incredible workshop. Okay.
It's a cool that's a cool subject.
I think so too, because it's like, yeah, you got a talking phoenix. Like, don't just make it a human and
Mhm.
bird drag. Like, actually, really make it an actual bird thing. What does that mean? What do you lean into? What do you research? I don't know where to start. That'd be fascinating. Okay, so the last question for you is, well, how did you and Karen meet, and what are both of your origin stories? Since you're a dyad now, working on these novels.
Yeah, so it's fairly uninteresting for how we met. We met in college, like a lot of people do. We're both actually. It's actually interesting. We both grew up homeschooled and kind of a lot of the same circles, but we never met each other, even though
Mhm.
we knew each other's siblings. We never met each other until college, which was
Oh,
probably good
funny.
because, yeah. But we knew each other through college, and then we got married while I was out of college and she was still in it. We've always enjoyed telling stories. We've always enjoyed that kind of thing. My other hat, and that's actually what I was there for the LegendHaven. I produce and publish RPG adventures, so
Oh,
that's something I
seriously?
do. Yeah,
Okay, I need
so
to have another
that's
conversation with you about
yeah.
that. Okay.
So that's what I do. That's what I've always done. And Karen she had the desire to make longer novels in a lot of cases,
Huh.
but we kind of worked together. We realized we did a lot of our strengths. We For a lot of our strengths, they really complemented each other very well,
Yeah.
and we just have fun working these stories out together. She plays RPGs; she doesn't run them. So
Amazing.
we played together a lot of that things. So we've always been kind of nerds. We've always been kind of interested in telling stories. We also have a lot of the same stories we love. Actually, while we were dating, one of the very first books we kind of talked about together was Till We Have Faces. That was one of the ones that we said, oh, I love that too. That was when we were just getting to know each other. So we've always had just a love for that. And Karen and I have always, we just worked really well together. We just have a lot of fun together for those things.
That's fantastic. That sounds like an amazing relationship there, friend. So after Freedom's Vow, you said that you're now working on the next one. Or not working. You're working on releasing the next one. It's in beta
Mhm.
readers. Outside of this trilogy, what else are you working on?
Oh, well, yeah. Um, so right now we are, while I am doing, so we parallel process a lot of things. While I'm working on edits for the third in the Freedom's Vow series, Karen is working on the first draft for a military sci-fi book that we're looking at. That's going to be called Fly the Fox. It is a wonderful space opera kind of military sci-fi about a reservist crew of a logistics ship who are the only survivors of a massive betrayal and disaster that killed the rest of the fleet. They're the only ones who know, far, far in a distant sector, where the villain who planned all this was, and so they've got to kind of make their way while being chased by a traitor fleet across a sector full of dangers and hiding, and so they've all got to treat it. It's not military sci-fi where you have a massive we can handle everything kind of a ship. It is, like I said, it's a bunch of reservists. It's a bunch of the other guys trying desperately to accomplish a military mission, but they have a smuggler's view on on everything. If you've met with any logistics type officers, you can see they're basically smugglers anyway. So, we're
Okay.
enjoying that. She's been ripping through that. Like she normally, so normally our goal is to have 10,000 words a week for
Wow.
just what we produce. But she's been ripping through that. She's been getting 50% faster than that just because she's
Do you
having so much
both
fun.
work like in this sort of thing full time, or do you also have other things that you're paying attention to?
Oh, I work full time.
Okay.
And she is a, I mean, she homeschools our kids. She is a homemaker. So she
Amazing.
does, yeah, she does a lot of work there. But we usually, we have time. We make time between things. I guess we don't watch a lot of TV anymore, but
Oh,
it's
you're
something
your
we do
own
together.
Netflix
So it's
channel.
fun.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we do together. So
Yeah,
my feeling for any of these things is if you're doing it with your family, it's not a waste of time. That's how
of
it is
course
for any
not.
of it,
Yeah.
and it's something we enjoy together. So it's something we've.
What a legacy you're building for your kids for sure. Um, seeing how you two get up to building something epic worlds together, frankly. Well, we got to wrap this conversation, but I absolutely would love to have you back on the channel sometime. I need
Absolutely,
to send you
man.
an email, some of these other talking points, and
Yeah,
maybe Karen could join us sometime. I'd love to meet her and chat with her about this stuff. If she'd
sure.
be game.
She's actually, yeah, to the point. She's actually homeschooling the kids right now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I'm working. I'm working. I'm just taking a half hour off of here to do this. So we have
I
other
won't
things in
tell
our
anyone
lives, but
beyond Yumi and YouTube. So
oh,
where
I
can
mean,
folk
this is my lunch break. It's fine.
sure, where can folk find you online so they can just share your website again so they can get a copy of the book?
Yeah, it's bkgibson.com. It's all one word. You'll see us there. You'll also see, if you are interested at all on the RPG side and other reviews too, I do a lot of work on the blog. So there's a blog on the website where I review RPG adventures. I talk about some of my own productions there, and then we also review some fiction and novels as well. If you want to get an idea there, the newsletter is a great way to see where we have it. And I'm all about try before you buy. If anybody wants to, is interested, that's why we have the novelette we give out. Also, when Freedom's Vow comes out, which is again going to be 5 days on the 19th, we have that on KU. So if anybody has Kindle Unlimited, you're welcome to read it there.
Mhm.
It's a lot of fun. I sorry I can't show off the physical copy because it's you got beautiful interiors too. They've done
Oh,
amazing work with
really?
the epigraphs. There's hoplites in every chapter. Like it's a very pretty work. I have a lot of praise for our formatter too. She does an amazing job.
That's awesome. Ben, thanks so much for coming on. This was a delight to meet you. It sounds like a fantastic novel.
All right. Well, it's both. So thanks, Dom. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Have an awesome rest of your day, Ben. Thank you.
All right. You too. Take care.
Alrighty, friends. That was a fantastic conversation. I thought we're going to bring on our next guest, which is Father Ryan. Hello, Father Ryan. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
How are you? Good to see you.
Likewise. Um, thanks for waiting. I was just wrapping up the conversation with our previous guest, Ben Gibson. Can you hear me okay? Is the audio coming through?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yes, I hear you fine.
Great.
Welcome back. Man, I think we're going to have fun just sort of picking right up where we left off. But
Yeah.
how have you been the last couple of, well, has it been a month, 2 months? How long has it been actually? 6 weeks?
That I
Oh,
was trying to think of that. I think it's 6 weeks.
uh,
I think that was kind of around Easter.
I think so too. So how have you been
But,
since? Anything
and I've been
interesting going
well.
on?
We're hiring for our department, and we're about to. Now I will be able to tell the faculty what how that looked, and they will be more than pleasantly surprised. But
Okay.
I can't. I can't divulge it yet. I'm waiting for one more thing to fall into place, and the emails are locked and loaded and ready to go. So it'll be exciting. It's a good way to end the academic year with good
Nice.
news.
Well, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
How about yourself?
Good. Yeah, doing well. Well, we were busy. We had our online convention. I moved into a new home the same
Oh,
weekend, basically, and um, our conversation. I think if I remember last looking at the stats on YouTube, like that one got some pretty good click through. People liked. Obviously, it's a very compelling topic to talk about horror, and so when we chatted on our last conversation, you ended by saying something fantastic that not only had you written this book, but you said your courses and how you. I'm now drawing a blank. Darn it! But it was like how you can use horror to understand scripture, or scripture reveals what's latent in horror, or something.
Yeah.
I just want to give you throw the microphone at you and go, please run with this. Let's get into this because that sounded really intriguing.
Sure. So there is, I'll adopt this from a phrase that Rene Girard used, and he once described himself as a reader of texts. And he was a very astute reader of texts, and I think his genius was to begin to notice latent patterns beneath the surface of works. And as as he had that insight into them and started to see the pattern operative across disciplines, he came up with his insight into mimetic theory. Well, doing my research and reading into the topic of horror and how horror is structured narratively, I began to realize that depending on how you approach there's two main genres of horror plot. The philosopher Noel Carroll identifies. One is the overreacher, the other is complex discovery. And if you think through the way those plot structures work, you start to have insight into basic themes of scripture. So let me give an example.
Okay.
The overreacher plot is that you could summarize by saying there is some knowledge not worth having. If you take Clive Barker's movie Hellraiser, the movie begins with a scene of a man sort of having composed a ritual, kneeling in a dark room, trying to open this puzzle box. Well, he succeeds, and these hooks fly out and impale him and tear him to bits. Or you take the game of like Bloody Mary, and what will happen if it works? The movie Candyman. If you summon Candyman, that's a knowledge of another world that really is detrimental to your health and well-being. But then look back to Genesis, that dynamic of the human knower, that there is some knowledge not worth having, the knowledge of good and evil, and the consequences of having that tear us from our Edenic state, our natives of being at peace and in unity with God, that we are still living with that wound, that rupture of what was, what should be, and the way things are now, and we have that deep sense of it shouldn't be. So with the overreacher plot, this act of like moving beyond your, getting out of your lane, students get a different sense of Genesis, a different sense of our own limitations. But then, now, do you have any questions about that? Is that working so far?
I mean, yes, of course, but I'm sort of half waiting to get a fuller picture before I start poking at things.
Sure.
Keep going.
Okay, so then Noel Carroll, he writes this book, The Philosophy of Horror, and he identifies what he calls the complex discovery plot. There are 4 movements in it, and depending on the film or the story, you can reorganize them, shift them about, or you could probably even go like 2 or 3, or sometimes the points get combined. But for the sake of simplicity, let's do our 4. There is and then we use the movie Jaws. Many of us have seen Jaws. All right. There's onset. We have teenagers skinny dipping in the water, and there is the intimation of a presence we do not yet see. And then poor Chrissy really discovers that presence because it tears her to bits.
But in this context, they're not actively seeking anything out. They're just blind to it or unprepared for this reality.
Correct. The film announces that there is something there, but we don't know what that is. So there's onset, something is happening. There's an incursion that somehow disrupts our status quo. That incursion of onset gives way to a process of discovery. We have to figure out what it is that is causing this pandemonium and chaos. That will lead at some point to a process of confirmation. So in the movie, so during the discovery process, we have Chief Brody trying to figure out, oh, is it a sand shark? Oh, no, it's a great white. You're consulting experts. You're going on explorations. You're amassing evidence.
Mhm.
But that evidence is resisted by the powers in control, the authorities.
Mhm.
The town council wants to hear nothing of this news because it will disrupt their economic model.
Mhm.
It takes a long while for that process of confirmation. It is indeed a great white shark. Alex Kintner being killed on the beach. That's where you have that inflection point that turns the story, and that leads ultimately to the confrontation on the Orca with Hooper and Quint and Brody going out in search of and confronting the shark.
Mhm.
Well, what I started to realize is if you look, and we could just take the Gospel of Mark. The Gospel of Mark begins with the onset of Jesus proclaiming, "Repent, the time is near. The kingdom of God." Blah, da, 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 da. Well, what you then get is how do we know what it means for Jesus to make this proclamation? Well, we learn it by watching the way his works and by listening to his words, the way he interacts with people, the way he teaches, moves, touches, heals. The parables he tells, the way they operate on the imaginations of his hearers. And then there is throughout ongoing conflict that it grows because there is a form of the status quo that is resistant to what he is sharing, what he is proclaiming and teaching. This ultimately, we have, in this case, confrontation uh, is flipped. The confrontation leads ultimately to Good Friday and the cross. And the confirmation of the process is the resurrection that, in a way, shows that who Jesus is and what Jesus said, has been ratified by God eternally, that he is who he claimed to be, who he revealed himself to be through his deeds, and that it is and what we start to recognize is the status quo that Jesus resisted and that fought very vehemently against him, a status quo of sin. The monstrosity of Christ is if he's telling us the truth, if, if the way he's revealing the kingdom of God to be in the world,
Mhm.
where the blind see, the deaf hear, the lame walk, where the outsiders become insiders, where the lowly are raised up. I mean, Mary's Magnificat, Isaiah in Luke 4. If that is the world that God intends, that God desires for us, if Jesus is telling us the truth about who God is and what God wants, then we're living incorrectly and we need to change. And there's nothing we want to do more than cling to the stable, secure status quo.
Mhm.
And for that reason, Jesus is resisted and reveals through the resurrection that we're basically, if you wanted to mix the metaphor here, uh, we're living in the upside down. Sin has made us live in the upside down that we take for granted. And Jesus shows us another way, a
Mhm.
way out of that, and that another way is possible.
Mhm. Oh, that's such a fun metaphor. Like if we're in the since we are in the upside down, we've accustomed ourselves to that. The incursion of a god into the upside down is you're equating Jesus to Jaws, as
Yeah.
something that we didn't know we were looking for, probably weren't prepared for, and it's not asking permission. Um,
Right. Yeah.
oh, that's so interesting.
And there's
So
in the
go
way in
ahead.
which he forces a change of life that
Yeah.
i- in word and work,
Uh-huh.
he's revealing something beyond himself, a new order. So in the language of horror, and we may have talked about this, there's the language of taxis or order,
Hmm.
the status quo, business as usual. This is the way, I mean, in higher ed, we love this. Well, this is the way we always do it. This is
Right.
the convention and the custom. The incursion of the monstrous force, however it manifests itself, is what the author Doug Cowan calls the meta-taxis, the sudden subversion of the status quo and taken for granted. And that is perceived rightly in a horror film as a threat that is to be resisted at all costs. Otherwise, the world as we know it is going to be lost. So when we look at the reactions of skeptics, when we look at the reaction of religious authorities, I mean, we can chide and make fun of Pharisees and Sadducees, but there is a way in which all of us are implicated in that process.
Mhm.
They're doing what they think is right. They're maintaining the world as they understand it to be. You know what? I mean, Jesus does come off as, in a way, a lunatic because what he is saying doesn't make sense given the parameters, the framework of understanding.
The game theory of um, being sane.
Yeah. And so,
Interesting.
I mean, there you have Jesus blowing things up. And the
Mhm.
credibility of his life and ministry is not found in logical arguments. It's
Mhm.
not in metaphysical speculation, though we can do that after the
Mhm.
fact. But it's in watching how he interacts and changes the shape of history around him,
Yeah.
changes the topography and the way we relate to each other,
Mhm.
recreating community in different
Mhm.
terms.
This is so fascinating. My mind's going too many different directions. Let me see if I can bring this back. We've got one thing that's routinely interested me is there's this one line. Where is it? St. Paul, I think he says he like astral travels to like the seven of the nine realms or something, right? And it's such a
Mm.
lovely little throwaway line, and he comes back to whatever he's talking about. And we're like, excuse me, wait, you did what? Now, hold on. I only see one, and you're saying there's now nine. Um, so a lot of like what you're saying about Christ, whatever his advice seems to be lunacy, if you accept there's only one level to this game, but if you accept that there's
Mm.
like an ascending and maybe there's a bit of a descending, and we're kind of like level 2 out of 9 or whatever,
Mm.
um, and there's a spiritual ascent process, and all of that is involved and influences, and it inspires and it engages. Sometimes you get stuff from one realm infecting or engaging or coming up and down this Jacob's ladder of reality, and
Yeah.
so you have to constitute yourself appropriately to handle a multi-tier sort of layer of reality. And then if you look at Christ's words from that point of view, you then get a lot more that makes sense. If we try to take everything from a physicalist material, sort of just this, you know, 9-foot belt around planet Earth inside a solar system,
Yeah.
you know, you get a lot of weird conclusions, or you end up getting really, really stuck. Um, I say all of that to say, horror is such a fascinating. I like how you turned the sense of Genesis around from a horror standpoint, because they were in a state of normalcy. They reached for something that wasn't yet theirs to attain or achieve, maybe if ever, or it was just an inadequate time, whatever. They weren't yet constituted properly to handle it. Whatever it was the wrong time, it was the wrong thing. And then they destroyed their world. It's like having a kaiju come rip through everything. Um,
Yeah.
and now they have to build an entirely new world. And then you get, like you say, Jesus is like, well, I say, Jesus is like Jaws coming through to the Jews of the time, or the people of the time, the world, and introducing something they weren't ready for, something completely new that's probably quite terrifying. I'm so interested. Maybe we chatted about this last time. I think we did, because I was mulling on this around Easter. Caiaphas as an anti-hero, and to try to get inside his mind and realize he genuinely thought he was a good guy. I've been messing around with the idea of the Sith as well, how
Mm.
they probably genuinely think that they are good, they are doing the good thing, and of course they get to benefit all the necessary evil that is part of that process, but they're genuinely trying to do a good thing. Maybe we can talk about that in a minute, 'cause I haven't yet been able to work that through. But um, it's if we keep pulling that line, I mean, you spend a whole semester or a whole book now drawing some of these conclusions. It's such an existential way to look at things from the point of view of either you respond with nihilism, or you respond with terror or fear at an inability to sort of solve this, or we can't seem to hold this line. And this is partly where I'm like, well, it's a 9-tier doohickey. Like, you can't
Mhm.
just carve out a little Eden for yourself and stay safe in a kindergarten. You're supposed to grow up and engage with the world, and that necessarily means parts will die and have to grow, and you have to integrate, and you got to, life is hard. You got to get harder, and something like this. And there's a point at which I think a lot of storytelling, it sort of starts in kindergarten stories, then it matures to like fantasy fiction, and it becomes epic fantasy, and then it starts to incorporate anti-heroes, and then you sort of end up in horror, and that's kind of the black edge before the cloud of unknowing. I think
Yeah.
that's a very horrific thing, to stand at the edge of the dark night of the soul and still press into it. And if you're not constituted right, it's absolutely horrific. But if you have an edge of, what's going through your mind as I'm rambling through some of that?
Well, I'm just thinking from a pedagogical point. I mean, it is good pedagogy brings people to an edge where they are confronted at that horizon with possibilities hitherto unimagined. And it's pedagogy fails if we think we just give
What's the
a
word
report
pedagogy?
of
That's like teaching children or
teaching
teaching. Okay.
anyone,
Anyone.
anyone,
Hmm.
anyone, any educational process.
Okay.
Invite if it's education, if there's a learning of any sort, an expansion of one's cognitive frameworks, understanding of the world, what it's doing is it draws you to some edge. And it's not asking you to say, well, tell me just about the edge. Give me a report about it. Instead, it's saying, if you were to go beyond this and be drawn into this other realm, this higher or low, more infernal realm, perhaps, what's the change that takes place? So there's always a risk. Education should always, good teaching, I think, should come with a warning, like beware, because you're going to change. You
A
should
parachute, not
change
just a
in the best.
checklist.
Yeah, I mean, like and it's like a bubble test. You can't. That's not learning. I mean, it's content mastery, but it's not the appropriation of it. Julia Child, not at all related to horror, once observed about cooking. She goes, "You can't define." She's got all this food laid out in front of her. She goes, "You can't define these in a recipe. You can only know them by knowing how the food should taste."
Mhm.
And if you've ever gone out with someone to a restaurant and they're like, I can't eat any of this. I don't like any of these foods. None of it makes sense to me. They have no idea what taste is. They have no idea of like how flavors could work together. If you try to cook and you get handed a recipe, and I think that's part of the charm of, say, the Great British Bake Off, when these contestants get a recipe that they've never heard of before or never attempted before, they're like, this totally stretches me because the recipe is not enough. You have to have a vision of what the whole is, a vision of the end product.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, for Jesus, what animates everything he does? The kingdom of God.
Mhm.
That is the center of his preaching. Kingdom of God. This is the way God desires the world and its history to be. Boom. And he brings people in, and there are people who can cross that threshold, who are willing to go into that new order. And there are those who say, I cannot go. That's a step too far. So I'm just thinking, I mean, from your points,
Mhm.
there's I think horror works because in a way it implicates the viewer. It captures the imagination to ask, what if there is more to the world than meets the untutored eye?
Right.
What if reality does have concealed and hidden depths that
Mhm.
it imperils us to ignore?
Right. Right.
And what happens if those hidden depths intrude or obtrude upon our daily lives? And how would we respond?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that enkindles the imagination in very different
Yeah.
ways. And I think that's why Jesus has staying power, apart from being the Son of God and the Christ, which is
Right.
big.
Apart from that.
Apart from that,
Yeah.
small things.
Um, so I'm just like two movies are rattling through my mind right now, because I've seen them in recent years. One being like what was it, the first one of The Conjuring, I think, and then there's
Mm.
well, The Ritual is one that I referenced last time with you, because it's fascinating to me. But in both of them, it's an engagement. I think that's what makes it horror, right? Because if you're prepared to deal with these things, it's like, what is it? The Pope's Exorcist movie with Russell Crowe came out. It wasn't really a horror movie. It felt more like a Marvel sort of film, partly
Mhm.
because he's equipped or constituted. He knows what he's up against. Okay, a little bit of a mystery there, but he's not really worried about it. So it ends up being more of a thriller than an actual horror in my mind. Um, as opposed to something like Conjuring, where he's like, I don't know what I'm dealing with, and this is a thing beyond my anything that I have to respond to it, and so that then leads to a sense of horror. And then I suppose same thing with like The Ritual. The whole thing is like, um, there is no capacity or ability to respond to any of this until the last sort of 3 minutes of the movie, and then he realizes, oh, here's the edges of this thing. There's a container around this concept, um, that we've forgotten. And so horror is a particular reaction to not just a loss of control, but that you're not enough for what you think is
Mhm.
reality. Um, What do you think?
I think that's well stated. That you're not enough. I mean,
And in
think
the
of the
sense of
way.
humility, right? Because a lot of us don't
Yeah,
have the humility. That's why these things intrude and push, because we're not humble. Whereas, like the Pope's exorcist, perfectly humble. I know this problem. I faced it. I've learned. I'm now not going to you know, get over my head on this thing.
yes. Well, think of how we valorize absolute autonomy,
Mm,
independence. I'm the master. We have a very romantic notion of the hero. You
hmm.
know, I can do this on my own. But in horror, you don't have that. It wouldn't be a horror movie. It would just be a schlocky action film where with a foreordained conclusion, the good guy's going to win,
Yeah,
or
Jason
the bad guy's
Statham,
going to
Alan
win.
Richardson. Yeah, just punch your way through
Yeah,
stuff.
but but in horror, there is a sense of confronting one's limitations. There's not only the confronting the limitation, the fragility of our flesh, that we are finite, fallible, mortal beings who are susceptible to death and suffering and pain, but also that say our spiritual resources may not be wholly under our control.
Hmm.
It's not in The Conjuring. The Warrens are depicted, and one could debate the veracity of this depiction, of course, but it's not like they're citing magic words that automatically are efficacious and have the effect that they want. There's a lot that takes place, and there's a lot of know-how, the Greek like phronesis, practical wisdom, that Lorraine Warren at the very end of that first movie, she has to follow her own intuition. It's not a rite, it's not a ritual, it's not a prayer or a formula, a creed. It's reaching into and grasping Carolyn's imagination and recalling for her who she actually was, that this evil force, this Bathsheba, has corrupted her, is denigrating her, decaying her, really physically, and that she can be pulled from it by reminding her of who she actually is, and
Hmm.
that moment of conversion, of turning away
Hmm.
from the darkness towards the light, vis-a-vis memory, the memory of
Right,
her
right.
family, of good times and love. I mean, that's very powerful, but that's uncontrollable.
Hmm.
Hartmut Rosa, the sociologist, emphasizes that the only way we can have resonant or deeply enriching and meaningful experiences is if there's a degree of the uncontrollability. If
Hmm.
if the horror if a horror movie just followed a standard plot, or when it follows a standard plot,
Hmm.
which is what I think the Scream movies or the scary movies make fun of so well, and Scream
Hmm.
is more self-conscious of, they cease to be horrifying because we know I saw that coming. But it's when there's
Yeah.
something uncontrollable, unexpected, then you say, whoa, it's making me think about the nature of the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, it's sort of immaterial, I suppose. I just realized I wasn't actually thinking of The Conjuring in my mind. I was thinking of Insidious, but it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Um, you brought us some other good points. Okay, so I was curious to ask, and we're sort of at time. How much more time do you have, or would you like to
Oh,
take?
I'm however long you need,
Okay.
not hours,
All right.
but yeah, I mean, we can make
So
it work.
one, I want to come back. Maybe if I can remember to do this, I've got a beef with Insidious, and I'm curious to chat around that one with you for a second. But before that, with this framework that you've or identified, or you've deepened, or you're now working through, what are some additional, I guess, sort of insights as you now reread through like sacred scripture or the Old Testament, especially? Um, you know what? Hold on. I've got a third question banging on the door, and I'm trying to catch it before it goes. So one is, what's different or what's interesting about sacred scripture that has emerged for you? Um, Let me be super annoying. Give me a second to see if I can process, if you would, that other question. Um, Maybe it'll come back. So let's go there. As you now reread through sacred scripture, you've already started getting fresh angle or fresh edge on, let's say, Genesis or the story of Christ, and begin to sort of sense the immensity of what these stories mean, especially to the inner experience of those going through those moments. Whereas we just get them in Sunday school so much more, routinely or whatever. Are there some other stories or moments through like the Old Testament um, and the New that have taken on fresh lighting from this point of view?
There have. I mean, I think it is part and parcel of being a Jesuit, where our hearts and minds and spirituality so deeply informed by the spiritual exercises, where you have Ignatius who invites you to put yourself into these scriptural scenes. Be with Mary at the Annunciation, be with Jesus as he's ministering, watch
Mhm.
as Jesus weeps in the garden, and can you draw near to him? So there's a way that the Ignatian imagination is always activated and is really attuned to entering scriptural texts.
Mhm.
The what I find helpful, maybe as much as a preacher as a teacher, is following this framework. Once the students see it and start to be acquainted with it. Now you don't preach onset and discovery, I mean, on a Sunday, but attuned to those dynamics, you can, in an era when I think we are impoverished storytellers and where our capacity for narrative and I think our instinctual capacity for it has been replaced by TikTok videos and schlock that lasts seconds on social
Right.
media, that when we tell the story well, we captivate people because we are storytelling animals.
Mm.
And we all long for our story to be fitted into and to make sense within a much larger story.
Mhm.
I think our politically, like the struggle with any form of nationalism is where, it's the nation above all else. It's because people long for this sense of belonging and that my story matters to something more. I think the conversions that we're seeing, and you could debate the significance of that.
Mhm.
What I do see is that these are young adults who have grown up largely with pornified, exiguous imaginations that are just thin. They've been given thin gruel to eat their entire lives, and then
Yep.
all of a sudden, they find a sacramental, engaged narrative that invites them in and doesn't placate them, doesn't pander to their base instincts, recognizes them, but says, "You are called to more."
Mhm.
And that's an adventure that we all want to be a part of.
Mhm.
So I think I think that's great. I think the attunement to the horror plots has helped me to make sure that fourth wall separating the
Mhm.
text and life
Mhm.
comes down very quickly
Yeah.
to show that these are stories that are meant to be lived in, not just
Mhm.
read about.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Makes me think of the line. What is it? Good neighbors. No, what is it? People say good fences make for good neighbors, right? And then somebody's reversed that recently, and I thought, I think it's pretty good. Good neighbors also make good fences, and that's something that it's valuable for us trying to be autonomous individuals in that and not being codependent with somebody else, or you're not triangulating, inappropriately with other people. You're maintaining a sense of emotional autonomy and maturity. It's also called this building a fence. But it's thinking about a lot of these horror movies, especially. This is so interesting. Horror in a pre-Christian versus post-Christian. And that's kind of where I want to go next here. I remembered my question.
Mm.
Um, it's a bit different now. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about what that means. But it seems a lot of horror today, it's being told in a post-Christian sort of sense, where you still have the indwelling Christ, which is an absolute head trip. But we live in a culture that no longer has the guardrails or the fences. We don't know how to recognize them or reinsert them, and I think that's one thing that's leading to well, maybe a lot of online discovery and conversation, because Jaws isn't gone away. So, okay, so what is my question? Um, Horror in the old world, pre-Christian world, versus horror in a world, and I want to say like in the year AD, right? In the year of our Lord, now meaning not just that was made incarnate, but that Christ now indwells like in the human species. He's now connected. We are now in him, and we can now be intentionally, consciously grafted into him and then like seriously plugged in. but I suspect there's also kind of a passive indwelling that also now happens that is inseparable now with the human family. And I'll probably get in trouble maybe for some of that. I don't know. That relationship now to horror is very different. And I think that's the hinge point for why history and mythology look so different. And that post-Christ, it's like the ceilings have been, or the evil gods and whatever have been like glassed off from being able to access us now, because there's a superstructure in place that kind of protects us from a lot of these things and gives us at least a minute to breathe. And so these things now are crawling back in through the woodwork and sort of needing our engagement. I'm fascinated by this sense that in the old world, evil and the passions and the gods and monsters embodied, for example, like the ritual. I'm half convinced the ritual is a awesome metaphor, if not diagnosis, of how the ancient world works. But then something changed and a lot of these monsters went away. Now you go out to Appalachia, you can still find them, stuff like that. But in general, they all went away. Why? Because they could now insert themselves into and express through the human. And now you get things that do not need to go away because they're now available as psychopathic elite, effectively still monsters doing the same things, right? That's sort of a messy kind of question. I'm curious what goes through your mind with some of that.
Well, I go to this. 1794, Immanuel Kant writes, "What is enlightenment?"
Okay.
And what is enlightenment? Casting off the shackles, the chains of your religious dogmas and supernaturalism. We will henceforth be guided by the pure light of reason itself. Sapere aude, dare to know. Like basically this heroic call to man up, and I think he probably really did mean man up, and be intrepid knowers. Well, it's funny because 20 years before we have Horace Walpole writing The Castle of Otranto, which kicks off the whole Gothic movement, where
Okay.
the displacement of the transcendent, God is no longer, or the transcendent is no longer way out there.
Mhm.
The transcendent is now below, and it's making it manifest itself from below.
From the inside
Um,
out. Yeah.
Yeah, and the upside down, making itself its own incursion into our version of the right side up. And when we look at say something like Girard, and I can see why people have an allergic reaction to him because he makes totalizing big claims, and we don't like that. Christianity does too. It tells a big story. But Girard says, look, what we have with the resurrection is putting a stake in the heart of the myth-making apparatus that perpetuates secret forms of violence that allow a culture to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And the innocence of the victim, the resurrection of Christ, might does not make right. That the stone the builder rejected that becomes the cornerstone becomes the edifice for not just a new story, but an entirely new way of life created on Jesus, who does away with the powers and principalities that before had governed the narrative structures of that we find in myth. And that even today, you could take like the profoundly atheistic, there's no God present in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper's original. But if you look carefully, there are you can't get away from that Christian residue. The logos, the revelation, has touched everything. It has so shaped our imagination, even when it's not present. It is still somehow.
It's like your idea that you should be you, and that being you is good, and that some sort of autonomy, freed from this incursion, this oppressive presence or whatever, it is good for you to be you. To me, that is not an idea that I found or I can think of or remember in the ancient world. It's a very Christian sort of concept. And even if you're not referencing Christ overtly in the story, this is the context from which we're now wrestling with these things.
Yeah, our understanding, even, I mean, Cardinal, then Father Ratzinger, well, no, I think in 1980, who's Cardinal Ratzinger, he traces the foundation of our understanding of person to the Trinity, back to Tertullian. And, or you could take Dom Sebastian Moore, who speaks of God. God is the person who persons me. The personal force in and through whom
Mm,
I am made the person I am meant to be in
mhm,
my distinctiveness, but it is not autonomy. A
mhm,
false autonomy is I do whatever I want because I want to do it. And that's adolescence, sophomore in high school.
right.
But there's a different form of, like, we could call it an absolved or a released autonomy that knows that I am, or in Africa, Rwanda, for instance, I have a student, Ubuntu, I am because we are. That is a form of deep relationality, that I
Mm,
am more me the more I am in relation with you. That God is not over and against me as some, petty, jealous deity, but is in fact, through an act of releasing love, what allows me to be me the more I'm in relationship, which is
mhm,
runs so counter to our cultural thoughts about dependence. We think
mhm,
independent, like any form of dependence is negative, and independence is good. The paradox is the more I recognize my dependence on my creator, the more independent I am,
mhm, mhm.
the more me I become, because I know from whence I come and to whom I belong.
Right.
And that,
That's beautiful. I love that phrase, Ubuntu. That's such a beautiful thing. Um, yeah, there seems to me to be a maturing of how we go about the theme of horror. Again, I'm just fascinated with pre and sort of post-Christ, not post-Christian, pre-Christian and then a Christian world, in that before the monsters are outside of you. And so you get the Iliad and you get the Odyssey and you get um well, the ancient myths, Enki and so on, and all the monsters are outside. Um, yeah, mostly because there isn't really a lot going on inside. Sort of the human consciousness was still at a more nascent level, and so we're you know, engaging with the environment, pushing things away, trying to create walls, trying to keep the walls up, trying to keep, a community. But then something happens. I think there's an, I love the word, what is it? Efflorescence or an incandescence of consciousness that really sort of
yeah.
catches fire, I think, with the presence of, of Christ. And consciousness sort of turns a corner. And I think we see that over the last 2,000 years. And now it's like we're wrestling with the monsters inside. And they're just as serious, just as real. So, okay, I'm curious, like I said to oh, I had an idea years back. You might have fun with this, maybe, but you're familiar with the series Black Mirror?
A little bit, yeah. I've
A little
watched
bit.
episodes. Yeah.
Okay. I thought it would be hilarious or funny or just interesting or insightful. And you've kind of touched on this a bunch through these conversations. I thought it would be interesting to retell a lot of Old Testament stories from the like a Black Mirror, but for the Old Testament. And that what if you were to
Mm,
retell a lot of these old stories uh, in the sense of a horror story, in the sense that all of these people have constructed a happy matrix with which to survive and navigate the world. It's exactly what you've been saying. And then something breaks through the black sky to introduce something different that you don't expect, that changes everything, that is terrifying. And then to re-look at each one of those stories from that upsetting, sort of semi-terrifying, reconstituting point of view. Um, you interrupt the sort of model I think a lot of us have from Sunday school or just hearing these stories over and over, because we've got the cheat code basically from the presence of Christ, who goes, "You want to understand God the Father? You look at me. Nobody sees the Father but through me." It's like, okay,
yeah.
that's the filter for understanding everything. But if you don't have that and you're in the ancient world, your only frame of reference is all the gods of the ancient world and the gods that you're currently serving. And then God comes in as a competing thing who says, "Hey, I'm bigger than everybody else. Do my thing." And it's actually even more terrifying. It's like the moment when you have those moments in sort of mafia movies where the guy's like, "No, I can't confess to anything. I'm not giving you the information." You're like, you can either be afraid of the mafia guy later, or you can be afraid of me now and my pliers, whatever it is. You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh God, I can't make this. This is an impossible decision." I wonder if Abraham kind of felt like that. Like, okay, but you gotta hide me in your shadow because I can't do anything against gods, the Canaanites or gods of Egypt or whatever. Um, I don't know where that goes, not asking for anything. It's just that really intrigues me as a line of storytelling, but also a line of reimagining the the boldness of what's happening in the Old Testament narratives.
I think when I teach, and I'm not a scholar of the Old Testament, largely because I don't have the languages for it. But one thing I point out is, whether they're first year students or seniors, we get a lot of, well, why is the God of the Old Testament so angry? And that's where there takes It's an opportunity to talk about the unspooling of a narrative. Is it that God's story is changing, that God is formerly peevish because, Adam and Eve, and then slowly, with a lot of time, changes his mind in fits and starts until we hit the Christ event? Well, maybe, but no. A better, more compelling version is to say, this is the story. I mean, the Bible is a series of books, and even some of our books are compilations of texts. They weren't just, unlike our students who write things in one sitting, they're written over a long period of time. But in that period of time, what is changing is our understanding of who God is. And that diminishment of our understanding of God's implication in violence, in a status quo, a world subtended or on the foundation of violence to maintain a social order,
Yeah.
that God is himself absolved of that through this ongoing revelation. There's no moment of, here's my calling card with a recipe on the back of what I'm actually like.
Yeah. Oh, and here's a
We come
Thomas
to know who
Aquinas
God
download of the Summa so that you can understand the framework from which or some of the
is.
framework from which I'm
Yeah.
operating. It's like, no, it's just do these things because there's no way you're not ready for everything all at once.
And how does the revelation take place? In and through the experience of people in their prayer and their liturgy, their worship, and their community as a group, coming to know who God is and the type of life God empowers them and liberates them to live. That what we say, always limited, because we know nothing we say will ever capture fully who God is, but the stories we tell are progressively a story of a God who is, in James Allison's words, like boundlessly and effervescently in love with us. But it's our own allergy to receiving that love, to that good news, which elicits a reaction, violent reaction. But I think over the course of the Old Testament, and certainly in the New Testament, you see that axial moment, that definitive breaking of, this is the pagan small g gods not godly enough, aren't sufficient. We have to have, God is other. And that otherness is grace.
Well, I think it also, again, we're now here at a point in history where we have the grace of the Gospels to, again, cheat code, to reinterpret, re-understand everything they went through. And it's a bit like finally becoming an adult. And, and as you're a kid, you're like, oh, my parents hate me and they're always mad at me and, because I can't do anything I want to do and so on, like teenagers, right? And then you get to be an adult, you realize, oh, I guess they were smarter than I realized. And my point of view about the whole thing, I assumed punishment was because they disliked me or hated me, but actually there was an entire meta level game that they were playing and trying to induct me into, and I was hell-bent on ice cream now, and I'm not taking out trash, right? So I think there's also, we're out of time for maybe pulling on this thread, so I'm curious about something else as well. There's another aspect to part of this story, again, from the sort of horror standpoint. I've been fascinated with xenomorphs, right? After I think I've watched the movies like once each or something, but I think it's Alien Covenant. I think it's the one that I watched, where it gets into more of the histories of these things and how they were leveraged against each other by what were the early pale beings called? I can't remember, the Makers or something.
The
And,
Irish.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
And so you get this weird history of things being wiped out and destroyed. And I remember watching that, and like there's this one point where they're walking through the landscape and someone goes, huh, there's no birds here. And then a spore releases and it gets into somebody's ear or something. And I remember hitting me at that point. It's like, oh, what if that's a way to understand the ancient world into which God is trying to inculcate the Hebrew thing, the Hebrew engine experiment? Like, you need to be a light to the nations, a healing thing, because everybody else, as much as I love them, has become infected with a xenomorph type thing. And so then you get like, there's some of these Christian researchers out there like Michael Heiser or Timothy Alberino or some of these others who are now doing really interesting stuff along the Book of Enoch and what that means. And I am very interested in the sense that we can't make sense of these dark periods of God's activity in the Old Testament It's a bit like trying to tell the story of World War II, but you may not reference the Nazis at all.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an impossible situation. You can't make sense of a lot of the impossible or difficult decisions people got up to. And I'm thinking, if you tell the story of the Old Testament, but you've extracted all the xenomorphs, and in a more concrete case, the demonic activity that was just running untrammeled and threatening to derail everything on multiple whatever levels. If you put that back in, then all of a sudden a lot of God's decisions seem to make a very different kind of sense, and you still layer onto it the fact that we were sort of functionally children, spiritually children. It becomes kind of an impossible, you can either shape up now or you can deal with them later. And it's like, well, they both feel awful, but maybe there's a bit of light at the end of this tunnel. I don't know where that goes. Sort of, go ahead.
Well, no, to your point, it just gives me an opportunity to rethink. If you look at Athanasius's On the Incarnation, so 4th century, and he uses the image at one point of that with the incarnation, God is revealing in and through Jesus Christ what we should actually look like. In a way, it's as if that icon of God, Jesus, enters our history and reveals to us that we are ourselves xenomorphic, shaped like the foreigner, shaped alien to what we ought to be, to our real nature, and that an encounter with that icon mediates a way of recovering the form, the morphe, so that our xenomorphism through the action of grace makes us Christomorphic. That doesn't mean that we're all wearing Birkenstocks and robes, but rather that authentic image of who Jesus is in his humanity, revealing God's divinity. There's a saving from xenomorphism by being inducted or drawn into the Christomorphic shape. I mean, and that's in the patristic era, divinization, theosis, the work of grace. It's not making us other than ourselves. It's making us to be ourselves as we're meant to be in the form and pattern, the image and likeness of God.
Oh, that's awesome. Maybe there's the title of the video. What is it? Humans are xenomorphs. We're saved from xenomorphism. Yeah. Wow, and I think there's an actual thought to really wrestle with. Father, we got to wrap this, but this was just so much fun all over again. Thank you so much for coming on.
It goes so quick.
It does. Like that. How are we already half an hour over again? Okay. Remind us again, where can we grab a copy of your book? And I'm sure there's even more in there that we could, probably get through. But at this point, you're basically giving us a semester for free online. You probably don't want to, but I sure would love that. But where could people get a copy of your book?
Amazon.com, and the paperback will be out pretty soon, so it'll be $15 less expensive, and it'll have about a dozen typos corrected, so that makes it all worthwhile.
Fantastic. Thanks again for coming on, Father. It was so good to see you.
Very well. Thank you. Good to see you again.
All right. God bless you.
Cheers.
And thank you, friends. We're going to wrap our live stream at this point because I got to run off now. And thanks again for hanging out with us. And if you've got any questions about anything, you can drop them in the comments. I always enjoy chatting with you. But my goodness, my head's a bit reeling. What a fun conversation. If you have not checked out legendfiction.com, please do. It is a community that I run, inspired by everything that we get up to here on the channel. We're constantly trying to find ways to help authors start and finish their dream novels. And we've actually made a couple of awesome, like really awesome friends on YouTube who've come on over and they've joined our community and seem to be having an absolutely fantastic time. Shout out to Vic, if you're still watching. Stoked that you've made it over to the community, and already there's just the worlds that people are creating. I'm hoping conversations like this help us to take that sort of faith-inspired thing about what we're doing and take it more seriously and lean into it and give you some more fuel for fantastic worlds that you're creating. Have an awesome rest of your week. May the Lord be with you. Keep writing.